Welcome to the January 13th Bozeman School District School Board meeting. Thank you all for joining us. Public comment will be taken throughout the meeting on agenda and non-agenda items. During public comment, no member of the public will be allowed to comment on contested cases, other adjudicative proceedings, or personnel matters. The public portions of this board meeting are being recorded in accordance with District Policy 1420 and Section 2-3-214 MCA. By remaining in this meeting, all participants and attendees acknowledge they may appear on the recording, which will be placed on the school district's website for a minimum of 1 year from today. Further instructions about participating will be provided throughout the meeting. Before we engage in the business of the board, I would like to share the core purpose of the Bozeman School District, which can be found on the back of our nameplates. It reads, Bozeman Public Schools exists to ensure high-level learning for all students. We will now move on to agenda item 2.1, student representative reports. BHS, Bridger, and GHS, you're all welcome to decide who goes first. There it is.
Amazing. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bertram. Okay, starting with what Stuco has been doing, we got all of our teacher appreciation gifts out last month, which is amazing because we love our teachers. Last month in December, we had a winter spirit week leading up to our winter talent show. Monday was pajama day. Tuesday was whiteout day. Wednesday was ski bum day. Thursday, holiday character day. And Friday was ugly sweater day. That one was tough for me. I only own cool sweaters. And then we had our winter talent show, which went amazingly. It went super well. We had 5 acts. We played a bunch of games. We also awarded our t-shirt competition winner, whose name is Ivy Bebb. And if you guys would like to see the winning design, it is here. It's, minimalist. And I think really it just has a certain panache to it. And honestly, I went to Hawthorne and we did t-shirt competitions just like this, and it actually reminds me of our t-shirts at Hawthorne, which I love. Moving on, we also had a constitutional convention just last week, which is where we go through our student council constitution, our guidelines by how we run our student council, and we make alterations that we deem are necessary. So that is always good, just some maintenance. Looking forward, we're still looking at the combined GHS, BHS winter formal / Valentine's Day dance for February 21st. And we are still looking at venues. A lot of places are booked up on the 21st. So if push comes to shove, we may have to hold it at one of the schools, which will be okay because I'm sure everybody will still have a good time. We're also looking to hold our dodgeball tournament in March. We haven't gotten any dates approved yet. But I think we're looking at the 27th. Our dodgeball tournament is where teachers recruit students to make teams, and then at like 7 p.m. on a Thursday night, a bunch of kids come, fill the bleachers, and we watch a bunch of teachers throw dodgeballs at each other, which is cool, especially if you got a bad grade the previous semester. And all of you guys are invited. Unfortunately, I do not have a sports report for you guys today. I'm very sorry about that. My partner Griffin is wrestling, and I think that it may have slipped his mind to fill that out. I'm very sorry about that. Activities are for DECA. All of the for written events have been finalized. The state test was taken by all students last week. And state is coming up on February 2nd, so that's super exciting. Speech and debate, we had a tournament in Pocatello, Idaho, this last Friday and Saturday. We got second overall. We had winners in policy debate, extemporaneous speaking, informative speaking, impromptu speaking, dramatic interpretation, humorous interpretation, and we also won an award for the furthest traveled team. So we are committed, and for our National Honor Society, we are inducting our new members next week, which is super exciting. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Truman.
Of course.
Who would like to go next?
We can go. All right. So starting it off, like always, I'm reporting on sports. So our girls basketball is currently number 1 in the conference, 6-0. Similarly, our boys basketball is also number 1 in the conference, which is the standard, 6-0. And they just beat Skyview, who is ranked and seeded number 2 in a pretty close game, but we came out on top like usual. Wrestling, JV just won a big tournament in Utah, and then we've had a large amount of varsity successes, placing in the top 5 consistently. Swimming is coming in first and second all season long, like usual. Speech and debate, we just had the highest team success all season at the last tournament we went to, which was before break. And then specifically within public forum debate, we had the highest ever squad public forum debate placement in our school's history. And then we have a lot of hopes for state. And we're all working really hard to make sure that our state success is actually followed through on. DECA-wise, like Truman said, all of our writtens have been submitted and finalized. And then we had a lot of members take the written tests. And it was a bit of a slog, but we got through it. With music, our orchestra has the AA Festival on the 3rd through 5th of February. And then activities-wise for music, our band has a chili dinner for fundraising, and then they will also have a bridge concert Thursday the 6th, and all of you guys are invited to that. All groups just played in our winter holiday concerts and gala, and the Mishneh also played the Jingle Bells as well with that, so that was a good time. And then a decent number of our band, orchestra, and choir members are preparing to go to All Northwest Conference in Spokane to participate in orchestras and different ensembles there.
Alrighty, and then moving past sports and activities, got a lot of other stuff going on within the school. This week and next, we've got students preparing for finals and kind of getting ready to wrap up the semester. And really strong showing from all of our students. Really great work, and we really appreciate all of our teachers for being around to help out throughout this final stretch to really get us through to the next semester. And so thank you to all our teachers, staff members, administration, everyone who's been helpful to get us to this point. We had some students, myself and Pranchu included, who attended MSU's Montana Legislator Education Seminar training last week, and so that was super educational, a good opportunity for students to see how policy, and specifically education policy, is processed within our state and see how that actually comes back to affect us. So it was really interesting, and we appreciate having that opportunity. We are organizing with Student Council a pickleball tournament. So similarly to the dodgeball tournament, we're going to be having some fun in-school activities. We're going to do that during lunch the first week of February, and students will be able to compete for some fun prizes. NHS is having a cleanup day, January 27th. We had lots of complaints about the cleanliness of our school, and our janitorial staff is definitely understaffed at the moment, so we're going to be having some students come in and help clean up, specifically our stairs. As you might have noticed, they're a little rough right now, so we're going to go in and clean those up and get our school shining as it usually is. We have, once again, the dance, like Truman said, will be still occurring. We're still working out quite a few of the details, but that will come along, and we'll get that to you as that reaches that final stage. And registration for next year is occurring now, so in the next month, we'll have students registering for their classes for the 2025-2026 school year. In addition to that, I'm going to pass these around. Yeah, sure. UNICEF Club is hosting its first educational night this January 27th, which is a PIR day at 7 p.m. In the GHS auditorium. We encourage you all to attend. The goal is to establish an educational opportunity for all of Bozeman, so anyone is welcome to attend. And this topic will be around human trafficking within Bozeman and as in a global context. So we certainly welcome anyone to join us and share in that educational opportunity. I don't think I have anything else for you, so thank you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. George?
Hello, trustees. Late Happy New Year. I'm going to talk to you about what we did last month a bit. So last month we had a group meeting where we got to have some fun stuff the day before Christmas. We did stuff like Mad-Libbing, and a cool candy cane race where you pick candy canes up with candy canes, and it was pretty fun. For, our monthly-ish Bridger breakfast, that's going to be held towards the end of January, the 31st of January. We aren't trying to pack our schedule too full since the big swap is happening, being a semester 2. And with our, what do you think it is, 17 seniors? Yeah, I did a count, and it's about 17 seniors. That's 17 senior presentations. Let's hope all of us pass that, because from my experience, this senior class of Bridger is one of the smallest to date. The junior class is massive, I'll tell you what. But yeah, we're just wrapping up the end of the semester, moving forward to the next one, and then moving over to that sweet, sweet summer vacation.
So some of the other things on the Bridger agenda, Mrs. Powell and Mr. Jenkinson are still visiting both high schools, middle schools, and just discussing with staff and students there what Bridger Charter Academy looks like. Next on the agenda for them is Gallatin High School, and then there will be a presentation held in the BCA community room with all of the outlying middle schools, just to sort of further cover that. And then in terms of the Bridger logo redesign, we are really entering the final stages of that process. The logo group, which consists of me and 2 other students, along with Mrs. Powell and Mr. Schwartz, will meet on January 16th to decide on 3 final logo design options, which the community will then vote on which one is their favorite. And then from that point, whichever is selected will go through, will be finalized one more time, and then be presented to everyone to represent BCA. The website for Bridger is in its final stages. Again, we're just waiting on the logo and some photos from teachers and yearbook staff that just further represent the Bridger charter community. And yeah, we're heading into, obviously with the semester ending, we're heading into registration for next year. And for Bridger, again, that just includes teachers and counselors going and talking to students about what Bridger classes look like and hoping to get recruiting up again because, like George said, our senior class is quite small, so hopefully we will not have that again in the future and really get our numbers up in Bridger. But yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Neela and George. Are there any trustee questions for any of the student reps? Thank you all for the report. Great job. Up next, 2.3 Recognition and Awards 2024 Gallatin High School Football All-State Individuals. Mr. Rader, Coach Hunter, whomever would like to come forward.
Good evening, board members. I'm going to introduce Hunter Chandler, head football coach of the Gallatin High Raptors. The Gallatin High Raptors qualified for the state semifinals, 3rd year in a row. Conference champs. I know they were disappointed they haven't gotten over the hump yet, but it's not for lack of effort on their part. So I'll turn it over to Hunter, and Hunter can introduce his all-state players.
Thanks for, taking the time to, honor these guys and, for their efforts. One thing I do want to say, though, just from the start, working with Mark Gator as our athletic director, I think we're really lucky that, we have someone like him in that position. I just know from a coach's standpoint, anytime we need something, he's always accessible. It doesn't matter what time of the night, day, whatever it is. He really works really hard to get us what we need and is a huge advocate for us. We really appreciate Mark Gator, and especially because he's split in so many different directions, but he does a great job. Talking about to these guys, and you know, I know a lot of you guys, you guys come to sporting events, and you've been around our community for a while. Football is really the ultimate team sport. So there's so many different guys that go into this, and the representation that we have is really a representation of the team success that we've had. So these guys had really good years, but we had a lot of really good football players, and our team did well this year, and that's why we have these guys standing up here today. I'm going to start with a couple things, though, just about our program that I want to talk about. I know I mentioned a few of these last year. Number one thing, in terms of some volunteer work that these guys do and our team does, something that just kind of popped up before winter break is that Operation Holiday. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but if you guys were out shopping in the community, especially at Target, Walmart, we had a huge influx of Gallatin kids that were out there shopping, and our football team took part in that. Matt Clark, the head golf coach at Gallatin, someone I'm also trying to recruit to football. Still haven't got him yet, but he does a great job, and he kind of organized all of that. And we had our football team. They shop for over 125 kids in the local community, so underprivileged kids that maybe Santa didn't stop by. So these guys got a list of things that these kids wanted or needed, and they got $100, and they had to go out and shop, and then they brought it back to. There's a location over by MSU, and they wrapped everything up and then delivered it. So really cool thing that these guys have done that wasn't too long ago. We did that Read Across America over at CJ, the Dr. Seuss Read Across America Day. And a lot of them, a lot of our kids are CJ kids as well, so they got to go visit their old stomping grounds. And then another big thing that we do here in town, the Lions Club does an awesome job. They keep our sport alive for 5th and 6th graders. And these guys on Saturdays would go out and referee those games so those games can happen. So they have a rotation of them doing them, but these guys, especially these guys standing up here just really do a good job of keeping our game alive and helping that Lions Club organization out. I'm going to start up here. He's actually not here today. One of the Dalkey brothers. So Reese Dalkey, I'm sure he's probably working or something like that. But Reese Dalkey, really, really, really good football player. He was a first-team All-State running back this year, and he was also the co-Eastern AA offensive MVP. If you guys, watched any of our games or saw any highlights, he was number 0. You kind of get him mixed up with his brother. Reese would say he's the better-looking one. I don't know, but he's, again, really good football player. He rushed for over 1,200 yards this year. He ran for 8.39 yards per carry, which is really good, and he had 20 touchdowns as well. So really productive football player. Really tough football player, really good leader for us. I don't know, over the course of his 4 years, I don't know if he ever missed an opportunity to volunteer or one of our team workouts or just anything we did football related. Reese was going to be there. I don't know if they do them anymore. I haven't heard about it, but the valedictorian, but I don't know if Gallatin had one. I'm sure Reese would be up in the running. He's a really high achieving kid, plus 4.0 plus GPA. He got a 34 in his ACT. We're just really smart. Off the charts academic, and I don't think he's going to go pursue college football. I really wish he would, because he's really good at it, but he's got a bright future ahead. But he was a huge part of our team's success the last couple of years. Next guy is Weston James, right here in the middle. He doesn't look like an offensive lineman, but he is one, and he's a pretty good one too. I don't have a lot of stats for him. They don't keep a lot of stats for the offensive line. He had some good pancake blocks for us, but he was a really good offensive lineman for us. We had a couple injuries up front, and he also ended up kind of sliding over to the defensive side. So, our last, I would say, 6 games on, he played every down both ways, severely undersized, as you guys can see. But man, he's a tough kid. He is a tough kid and had a really good career for us, and someone, not just on the field, but his leadership off the field, in the weight room, in the meeting room. We're going to miss him dearly as he moves on. Tommy Springman, the next one, right over here, is he was awarded a first-team All-State fullback. He was first-team All-State inside linebacker, and he was the Eastern AA defensive MVP. He's headed up to MSU after a really strong senior season. He had 22 catches on the offensive side for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then on the defensive side, he had 87 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and a sack. And, he's probably heard me say this so many times, but, and he's someone we will reference in our program for years to come. We had a really talented senior class that left last year, a lot of really good kids. And Tommy, primarily played JV, played a little bit of varsity. But I don't know if whether it was as an athlete or as a coach, I don't know if I've ever seen a kid take a bigger jump from his junior year to senior year. he took a massive jump for us and had a really, really, just dominant senior year. He had a lot of different frontier schools that wanted him after the summer that he had, and MSU came in and gave him an offer, and he's headed up to MSU here in town. So it'll be nice to watch him grow as he goes on throughout his college career. But really good football player, really good leader, really tough kid, and someone that had just a really dominant senior year for us. Mikey Anderson is someone that's not here today. He's a senior for us this year, moving on, and he kind of played a bunch of different roles for us. Played some defense, played some special teams, but he was a first-team All-State special teams guy, which is a really cool thing, because I think anytime you go into the a meeting or a game, or it's all about offense and defense, and usually people want to talk about offense. But Mikey made a massive impact for our team on special teams. He was our kicker. He led the state in scoring. He had the most extra points kicked. He led the state in special teams tackles, and he was a big difference maker for us, and also ended up kind of starting at the end of the year, towards the end of the year in our playoff push. So, and he's another one too, really, I think he's got like a 3.9 GPA, so really, really smart kid, does really well academically, and someone that's going to be really successful moving forward. But he was a big part of our team and a big piece of our leadership group. Next, I'm going to go to our two juniors down here, Bobby Gutzman. He's the tallest one of the bunch, right over here. He's a junior, first time starting varsity football. Played a lot of receiver for us, played some corner, played some safety, but he was a first-team All-State safety. He had 51 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and was second in the state in interceptions with 4. Big, integral part of our team all the way around. He's really athletic, 6'2", can jump, he can run, and he doesn't say too much, but he's a fierce competitor and made some really big plays for us this year, and someone that we're really excited about, having back in the team next year. Carter Dahlke, the shortest one in the bunch. He thinks he's taller than me, but he's not. He's, most people in the state don't really know who he is, but he got a couple awards this year. So he was a first-team All-State receiver. He was a first-team All-State defensive athlete. He was the first-team All-State punt returner, first-team All-State kick returner, and with his brother, he was the co-AA offensive MVP for the eastern side of the state. He had 58 catches for 1,200 yards receiving. He had 648 yards rushing, 24 total touchdowns. I think he had 20 on offense, and then he had 4 punt returns for touchdowns. On the defensive side, he had 65 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. Doesn't look like a very big guy, but 7 sacks, that's pretty good. And then he led the state in both kick and punt return yardage. So a really, really good player. Someone it's his 3rd year starting for us, and he'll be back next year for his 4th year, and he'll be a big leader for us moving forward. Another one too in academically, 4.0 student, off the charts, smart, really hard worker. Same thing in terms of his brother. Just anytime we do anything Raptor football wise, he's going to be there, and sets a really good tone and standard for our program. And someone that again, we're just excited about moving forward next year. And one of the most, for his junior campaign, one of the most dominant, I would say, football seasons I've been around a long time. And I think if we would have won it, he probably would have been the Gatorade Player of the Year. And then a couple more things. I know Mark Yater already mentioned a few of them, but our GPA cumulatively, we had 138 players that came out this year, so that's a lot. And collectively, those guys had over a 3.3 team GPA, which is pretty good. Like he said too, we were the first time for our team, in 5 years, won the Eastern AA Conference. We were 7-0 in conference, and we had a 10-1 record overall. And then we also were awarded at the end of the year the MHSA Team Sportsmanship Award. So that was something pretty cool that we got at the end of the year. And we had a lot of success this year too. But I think even when we did win, our kids, just resemble good sportsmanship, with other kids, with other coaches, with other teams. And then also when we lost, I think they handled it in a really good way. And so that was a cool thing that these guys earned. But it's for me, it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but 5 years ago it was a tough go at it right away. Obviously, no seniors, and I talked to these guys about it. Some of these guys had brothers on the team, but we played Billings West that year, and they beat us 70-0. So we took some lumps, but every single year we've gotten a little bit better. We went from 1-5 to 4-6 to 9-3, 9-2, and this year we're 10-1. So we keep chipping away. We're trying to get over the hump, and these juniors look forward to coming back next year. And then I think these seniors just they definitely left our program better than they found it, and have left a really good legacy for us. So we appreciate their efforts and all that they've done.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. Great presentation. Any questions for the Gallatin High School football All-Staters? Lauren?
I just would like to make a couple quick comments. Thank you guys and congratulations. And thank you, Coach, for this program and all you've done. Real quickly on the Operation Holiday, I just wanted to touch on that, and I talked to Matt Clark about it. The people who run that cannot believe how amazing our Gallatin High student athletes are, and just their dedication to that, and just how everybody held themselves and represented the GHS community. And I think that's a large part of what we're doing, right? We're not always going to be football players or maybe even students, but you're always going to be a community member. So thank you for touching base on that, because I think it's huge. And then to the seniors, I want to say, I hear a lot of great things about how you lift up others, and Weston in particular. I don't want to embarrass you, but my son's wrestling JV, kind of, and skiing. And he won a match recently, and you looked like he just won state. And I have it on video, and I sent it to your mom. You champion all kids, and I hear that from so many people. And I think you're going to leave huge shoes to fill, because I hear from a lot of people that when they needed a little push, they got it from you. So I hope whatever you do in the future, know that you have left an impact on a lot of kids, and I hope there's a senior or a junior that's ready to do that. And I know the kids I've talked to, I've said, remember how that feels, because you'll be there one day. So congratulations to all of you. It was so fun watching you play football this year, and watching from 5 years ago. It was a very exciting year, so you should be proud of yourselves.
Kevin?
Well, congratulations to all of you. Coach Chandler, congratulations. Good job on a great season. I guess I have a question for Tommy or Weston. What are your guys' plans? Obviously, I heard that you're going to MSU. Weston, you have a plan, and do you guys have an idea? Not that you have to at this point in time, but maybe what you're interested in studying?
Oh, well, I'm going to GCU because I wanted to just see out of state and have a nice cheap way of college. And I'm studying athletic science and having a business major because I just like understanding nutrition, and I'll also study nutrition, and I just like understanding. I just want to be something like that. So I plan on studying business management.
And Carter, I didn't hear in there were a lot of things that you did this year, but I didn't hear a pick six. No. So maybe
I don't think
next
he's ever
year.
had an interception. I don't know if he ever has. Yeah.
Too small.
Yeah.
There you go.
He's tipped a couple to some of his teammates. He's a good teammate that way.
No, it was fun. I was able to make a couple games, so it was fun to watch you guys compete and play hard and do all the different things that you guys do on the field. So it was fun to watch. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was a fun season to follow you guys for sure. I know you didn't quite get to where you wanted to be. It's not easy to win a state championship, turns out. But man, you guys were right there, and it was a good run you guys went on, and great job representing your school and your program, and you seniors are leaving it for sure in a better place than where you found it. And for clarification, Grand Canyon, that's GCU? Okay, nice, that's great. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, thanks, Coach Chandler, for everything you do. Great leader of the program, and high character kids, and you promote that culture, and so thank you very much.
Thank you. One last kid I actually do want to talk about, though. I know we're just talking about the All-State kids. We did invite some of the other kids on our team that got awards just to show up if they wanted to. And, Grant Vegan's here. He was the second-team All-State quarterback, and that was just because we didn't make the state title game. But he was a really good, obviously player for us the last couple of years, and had a really good senior year, and a really good leader for us, and a really big reason why, we had as good of a year as we had.
He's here in the room.
He is. He's the
Well,
6'6".
come
kid,
forward,
right? He can
Grant.
stand up. You'll be able to see him.
We're not exclusive just to All-Staters here. Welcome, Mr. Vegan. Thank you. So, who has the award tonight? Trustee Bertelson.
Yeah.
So I just want to add another comment too, that, including your success and congratulations on the season, and thanks so much to Coach and to your parents for supporting you through all of this. But it's just remarkable what leaders you are, not just on the field, but off the field. So I'm just super impressed and proud of you guys for that. So thank you for being here tonight and letting us honor you. And with that, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt the following resolution. Whereas the Gallatin High football team finished the season with a 10-1 record and advanced to the semifinals in the state AA football playoffs. And whereas the following players earned first team All-State honors: Mikey Anderson, Carter Dahlke, Reese Dahlke, Bobby Gutzman, Weston James, Tommy Springman, and I want to say your name too. Grant Vegan, and for second, right? Right. Congratulations for that. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees recognize and honor the 2024 Gallatin High football first team All-State individuals: Mikey Anderson, Carter Dahlke, Reese Dahlke, Bobby Gutzman, Weston James, and Tommy Springman, and Grant Vegan.
Second.
Motion made by trustee Bertelson, seconded by trustee D. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Congratulations. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to your parents. And if we could talk you into joining trustee Bertelson out in the hall for a picture, that would be great. Thanks, Coach. That was the wrong button. While we're in the dark, I would take a motion for consent agenda.
I move the Board of Trustees approve consent agenda items 3.1, 3.2, and 3.4.
Second.
Motion made by trustee Reinhardt, seconded by trustee Wilson. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion passes 7-0.
I move we approve items 3.5.1 and 3.5.2.
Second.
Motion made by trustee Reinhardt, seconded by trustee Black. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0. And math is not my strong point. Up next, action item 4.1.1, consider approval of fiscal year 2023 to 24 annual comprehensive financial report and audit report. Mrs. Clark.
Good evening, trustees. I'm going to ask Julia Wayman, our accounting supervisor, and Janine Hathcock, our auditor partner at Eide Bailey, to come forward. They're going to give you guys kind of a snapshot of what the year end finished like for our books, how the audit went, and how the financials looked. I do also want to just point out, this is our second year with Eide Bailey. We're in a 3-year contract with them. So Janine has been on our account for the last 2 years, and this was Julia's third audit that she finished up. So second audit with Eide Bailey, we switched auditors a couple years ago when AZ no longer did governmental accounting. So we appreciate the relationship that we have with Eide Bailey. They're really easy to work with. Julia's superb at her job, so she makes everybody feel at ease working with her, and she does an excellent job for the district. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them and let them give you their information. Julia, you'll have to push the little people button or the person button on your mic.
And then maybe, yeah, point that down. Perfect.
All right. We're good. Okay. Hi, as Lacey said, my name is Julia Wayman. I'm the accounting supervisor in the business office. I'm really excited to be here with you guys tonight to share the results of this past year. So this annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR as we call it, that I'm going to present today is largely used by the state and federal oversight agencies, bond rating agencies, bond issuers, taxpayers, district staff, and the public as a tool to get a bird's eye view of the district's finances in a format that is consistent with other districts. Our statements are a bit more expansive than some other districts because we do apply for an annual award with the Government Finance Officers Association and have to abide by their rules and requirements. The full report is available electronically on our district website under the Business Services page for any who wish to dig into more detail. I also have a few hard copies here for anybody who is collecting these, anybody who would like one.
We need to give them to Doug.
So I decided to change things up a little bit this year with the presentation. So I kind of pulled out what I think are the top 10 takeaways from this year's report. So number one, so I know you are all used to seeing the monthly financial reports. So I wanted to point out that ACFR is different from those monthly reports. The monthly reports serve as the basis for the ACFR. However, there are many accounting entries that are made to convert our books to an accrual basis as required under governmental generally accepted accounting principles. The biggest example of this is the net pension liability, which is about $68.1 million. It is included within our government-wide financial statements under the requirements of GASB 68, but is not in our day-to-day books that are kept on a budgetary basis. This net pension liability represents our participation in the Teachers Retirement System, or TRS, and the Public Employers Retirement System, PERS, and is measured annually using an actuarial valuation. There's a few other examples of the differences between the reports. These would be compensated absence and other post-employment health benefit liabilities, the treatment of capital assets, and the related depreciation expense. So the previous year was a pretty busy year with a lot of accounting changes. We implemented GASB 96. We had a new lease that fell under GASB 87. It was the first year of our contract with our auditors, Eide Bailly. We brought the presentation or preparation of the ACFR in-house. So really comparatively, fiscal 24 was pretty quiet from an accounting perspective. There was one new accounting standard that we implemented. It was GASB 100 related to accounting changes and error corrections. So in this past year, the qualitative calculations determined that our elementary grants fund should be classified as a major fund. So the change under the new guidance required us to present an adjustment to beginning net position to show the change in classification as if it occurred as of the beginning of the year. So you'll see that if you review the reports. After the change in auditors last year, it was great to work with Eide Bailly again this year. The audit and reporting process went very smoothly, and we were even able to issue our report significantly earlier than in years past. There are always accounting changes coming in the pipeline, so next year we'll be implementing GASB 101, and that's related to our calculations of compensated absences. And also we will look at GASB 102, certain risk disclosures. All right, so takeaway number 3 is looking at our revenue. So in fiscal 24, the district experienced an 8.4% increase in revenue. That equated to roughly $9.3 million. The new tax levies for school safety and the high school general fund were collected in this past year. We saw an increase in county funding and local taxes that offset the reduction in the state guaranteed tax-based subsidy. Another contributing factor to the revenue increase was high interest rates, resulting in additional investment income compared with the previous year. And as we all know, the interest rates can be very hard to predict and vary from year to year, but we did see that benefit in fiscal 24. Here I have a breakdown of the district's revenue by source. So you can see that over 63% of our revenue comes from local and county sources. The biggest chunk of that is tax revenue. We also receive about 33% of our revenue from the state. That is down about 3 percentage points from last year, kind of showing that shift that I talked about of funding from state to local. And finally, a small portion of our revenue comes from federal sources, primarily in the form of grant revenue. So we talked about revenue, so now I'm going to look at expenses. So in fiscal '24, the district experienced a 3.4% increase in expenses. So that was about $3.7 million. This increase was largely attributable to inflation, increased costs of recruiting and retaining district staffing, and enrollment-driven expense increases. We realize rising salaries and benefits largely due to raises of 4% for certified staff and 5% for classified. And then we also did see that 1.4% increase in enrollment, which results in increased costs across functions. Looking at expenditures, this chart shows expenditures in the elementary and high school general funds broken down by function in a comparison over the past 10 years. So you can see the expenditures have increased over the years, and the graph shows you which functions are showing the largest increases. As you can see here in that final column in fiscal '24, instruction continues to be our largest functional expenditure and showed an increase during the year. Our takeaway number 5 is payroll, always our largest expenditure. So as you saw on the previous slide, instruction is our largest functional expenditure, which really translates into salaries and benefits for our teaching staff. Consistent with the prior year, salaries and benefits represent about 59% of total district expenditures. Looking just at the general fund, that number is 89%. The payroll team stays very busy. They issued over 1,500 W-2s and processed over 15,000 direct deposits in the year. I know that a lot of time was spent in the last few years discussing the budget reductions needed for the general funds. With those reductions put into place in fiscal '24, the elementary general fund ended the year over budget by about $590,000. This was a considerable improvement from the previous year shortage of $1.7 million. The district used interlocal agreement funds to close that gap. On the other hand, the high school general fund showed a significant recovery and ended the year with a surplus of just over $1 million. This surplus was transferred into the interlocal agreement fund where resources are accumulated for future district needs. Here I have a quick chart to give you a visual of the change in federal grant funding over the last 6 years. Our federal funding has dropped significantly. We're now back to pre-COVID levels. We had a peak in fiscal '22 of over $11.2 million. We're now back to federal grant funds of about $4.8 million. Within the single audit section of the ACFR, which relates to the audit of our federal awards, there's a great schedule that details all of our awards and how much expenditures we had for each of those awards in the current year. Here's a little snapshot of that chart. You can see here we have our recurring title and IDEA grants and the federal funds received by the school nutrition program. This year, the auditors tested the IDEA cluster, which included all of our special education funding and totaled over $2 million. By far, the largest portion of the district's positive net position reflects our net investment in capital assets. These are things like our tangible land, buildings, equipment, construction in progress, and also include our right-to-use assets like leases and software agreements. Thinking about all of our school buildings and facilities, it makes sense that this is such a large number for us. As of June 30th, 2024, the district had invested roughly $332.8 million in capital assets. This amount represents an approximate increase prior to depreciation and amortization of about $1.9 million over the previous year. Total depreciation and amortization expense for the year was just over $10 million. The schedule here represents capital assets net of depreciation and amortization for fiscal '24. Anyone interested in further details on the capital assets can find more information within the notes section of the ACFR under Note 3C. The statistical section of the report is a great resource for some high-level district information. Here we present 25 different tables of information as an added tool to better understand what the financial statements, note disclosures, and supplementary information is saying about the district's overall financial health. The main types of schedules presented are financial trends, revenue capacity, debt capacity, demographic and economic information, and operating information. I would highly recommend a review of the statistical section to anyone interested in digging into further details on these topics. Here I have a few examples from that stat section. This report I have here is a 10-year comparison of the district's net position from governmental activities. There are several schedules like this that include historical data to give a great year-over-year comparison of our financial performance. This is one of my favorite schedules. It's a comparison of the high school district's principal taxpayers from this current year to 9 years ago. What's interesting here is that the #1 taxpayer in the district, Northwestern Energy, has stayed consistent over the years, while almost all others have changed over time. You can also see that the top 10 represents a small overall percentage in 2024, indicating the taxes are spreading over a larger number of taxpayers. Here's one final example from the stat section. There are several schedules that include operational data, like this one here that shows 10 years of enrollment in A and B. This schedule helps identify the trends in the data. Here you can see the steady climb in enrollment leading up to COVID, and then the slow recovery. Finally, my last takeaway here, I wanted to say that the business office is very proud of what we've accomplished this past fiscal year. Our auditors will go into more detail, but we received a clean audit opinion with no identified misstatements or material weaknesses. We worked closely with our auditors to go through every detail of the ACFR and continue to improve the presentation. We have confidence in our day-to-day operations and the quality of work that comes out of the business office. I will hand it off here to Janine Hathcock for the auditor's portion of the presentation, unless there are any immediate questions.
Seeing none.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't really have much to say. Julie always does a great job. All right, well, thank you all for having me here tonight to give you the results of the fiscal year 24 audit. Yeah, so we've got a pretty short agenda. I'll go over the financial statement audit opinion with you all, the single audit on your federal awards, those opinions, and I will conclude with our required communications. But before I get into going into my agenda, I first want to thank both Lacey and Julia for their dedication in making sure that this second year audit went really, really well. So I'll take you to the financial statements. There was a link on the, if you all are following along, but there was a link on the agenda. But you can find our opinion on page 20 of that PDF. Out of this entire financial statement packet, we only contribute 4 pages. The rest of the document is prepared by Julia, Lacey, and their team. And it's not an easy task, so I want to commend both of them for putting together such a great document. So, to the opinion, that's what you pay us for. So the very first paragraph discusses what was audited. So we have audited your financial statements of your governmental activities, each major fund, and the district has 6 of them this year, and the aggregate remaining fund information, which is really just an aggregate of the non-major funds, but that's 8 opinions in this one document. And as Julia mentioned, it is a clean, unmodified opinion. You can find that in the second paragraph. It's the best you can get, and we state that in our opinion, your financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects and in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. Any other CPA firm would come to the same conclusion, and if given the same set of records, and we can say that because of paragraph 3, and that is the basis for our opinion. And basically, we say that we follow all of our applicable required auditing standards. We were independent, and we met all of our ethical requirements and responsibilities. Now, the 4th paragraph starts on page 2. It is a breakdown of both management's responsibilities and auditors' responsibilities. Basically, management is responsible for the fair presentation of those financial statements, and it is our responsibility to perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. and government auditing standards. And we bullet what that means in the opinion. Oh, third and fourth. Oh, she just. So the third and fourth pages of the opinion start talking about other information that is in your basic financial statement in your ACFR. The first one that's discussed is the required supplementary information. This is going to be things like your management's discussion and analysis and your pension and OPEB schedules. We do apply very limited procedures over that information, so we do not express an opinion over that information. The second paragraph on the third page discusses the supplementary information that's in your financial statements. This is going to include your combining statements and the supplementary information that's required by the state of Montana, and your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And with that information, we do provide certain limited procedures that we can give what we call an in relation to opinion. So we can say that these schedules are presented fairly in all material respects in relation to your financial statements as a whole. And then finally, you also have other information that's in your financial statements, and this is going to be your introductory section and that statistical section that Julia went over. This information is not audited, so there's no opinion over that information as well. Now, the very last paragraph of our opinion discusses other reporting, and this paragraph, it just says that we also issue a separate report in relation to the district's internal controls over financial reporting and on our testing of that compliance as required by our government auditing standards, and that is all included in your single audit report. So I'll go over that in just a minute. The next slide, we just like to show there aren't any findings regarding the state of Montana compliance related to school districts. And then this slide I put together, I just like to kind of show you all what the upcoming accounting standards that might impact the district. As Julie already mentioned, compensated absences is coming up. That's probably going to be the most significant one on this list that's applicable to the school district, and that is in this upcoming year. The following fiscal year, probably financial reporting model improvements and the disclosures on certain capital assets will have a minimal impact. Primarily with the financial reporting model, it's probably going to be you'll see a revamp to your MD&A. And I'll pause. Any questions on the financial statement audit?
I think we're good.
Seeing none. Okay, I'll move on to the single audit. This is a separate report, but it is included in that financial statement packet. And this is our report to you for the testing of your federal expenditures as required by the uniform guidance. If you are following along, it's on page 191 of the PDF. Now, this packet includes two different audit reports. The first is the report on your financial statement internal controls, and that can be found on page 194 of the PDF. This is a report, it is not an opinion. Okay, so the main takeaway from this report is to let you know that we are required to consider your controls over financial reporting, but we don't test controls. So we don't express an opinion over your internal controls. However, if we find any deficiencies in internal control that rise to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency, we are required to bring that to your attention. We don't have any to report to you during this year. Next is the Uniform Guidance Report. This is a report and an opinion. It is our opinion over your compliance related to your major program that we tested, which can be found on page 196 of the PDF. And the first paragraph states that we did audit the district's compliance with the OMB compliance supplement. And then the next paragraph is our opinion on the program that we tested. It is an unmodified opinion, clean opinion. And as Julia mentioned, it was over the Special Education Grants for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA cluster. The second page of the report does describe both management and auditor responsibilities, similar to the audit opinion. And then the final page includes a report saying that we did consider the internal controls over compliance of the federal program. We don't identify any deficiencies in internal controls over compliance to report to you. And as Julia had already shown you on her graph, I just put together a slide that kind of showed the spend down of the 2022 COVID money, and now we're kind of back to normal 2024 and 2023 spending on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards is pretty similar. So we're back to pre-COVID numbers. And then the next slide is my favorite slide. It is on page 199 of your packet. It is a summary of our audit results. So if you don't remember anything I said just now and you want to know what happened tomorrow or the next day, you can go to this page. The top of the page discusses the financial statements. You can see there's unmodified, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report to you, no non-compliance to report to you. And then it goes on to what happened with the federal awards, no internal controls, deficiencies to report to you, and an unmodified opinion. And with that, I'll pause. Are there any questions on the single audit?
Seeing none.
None? Okay. All right. So the last item on my agenda is to discuss our final communication with to you as governance. It's not part of that financial statement packet, so if you are following along, there is a link. It was a separate link under the board packet. It was facts was the header, and then there was a number 3 that says letter to governance. But this report is required by our professional standards to be communicated to you, and this concludes our requirements as your auditors. But basically, we let you know in a letter that we've complied with all of our professional standards, including all of our ethical requirements. We do bring to your attention that there was an update to the district's accounting policies that Julia already discussed, but it was the implementation of a new GASB standard, GASB 100, on accounting changes and error corrections. We highlight any significant estimates that are included in your financial statements, so pension and OPEB. We also list sensitive disclosures that are included in your financial statements, and we believe that they are significant just due to their importance of the users of your financial statements. So that we call those out to you as well. There aren't any uncorrected or corrected misstatements to report to you this year, and we are happy to report we didn't have any disagreements with management. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Hey, Gary.
Thank you very much for another good report, and thank you for Lacey and Mike and Julie and the crew doing a great job. I'm curious with a couple things you cited was some additions from GASB in 26, I think. So does that result in any change in software program or workload or anything for our office to gather that data?
There won't be, they don't have a software that they use to put together their ACFR, so that one for 26 won't. It won't affect that.
I can say from the workload standpoint, every time there's a new GASB, Julia spends a lot of time going through professional development, education, digging into our books, seeing what we need to do to comply. So from a workload standpoint, she takes the brunt of it, and she does a great job with it. She knows it inside and out, and she kind of reinvents, or she invents new things because it's all new law. So she does a remarkable job.
Thank you very much for your service to the school district, and sounds like it's all good news. So, Lacey, thank you for everything you do. Tanya.
I just wanted to thank you. I really liked the way you presented it this year. I loved knowing that there were going to be 10 takeaways and seeing them on the left and then on the right. I found it very helpful. So thank you for doing it that way.
I was trying to do something a little different this time, so.
I really did appreciate that.
Awesome.
Seeing no further questions, yes, Mr. Waterman.
Just a comment, and I think it just bears restating the the tremendous job Julia and Lacey and their team do. There's no one else in the state of Montana that consistently gets this GFOA award. Julia walked in here 3 years ago and just picked up where her predecessor left off and has really improved things since then. She's created the spreadsheets. All of this stuff that you're looking at is all done by hand. There is no software program that she uses to create this. This is Excel files that Julia's created, and she puts it into this award-winning format. There's no other school in the state that does that. I also want to add to you the size of the business office is something that you should know about. If you compare business offices across the AA districts across the state, ours is one of the smallest. We do that on purpose. I think we have some good processes in place, but we have some tremendous folks here who do some tremendous work and try to keep our costs out of the business office and in the classroom where our core purpose lies. So you can't say enough. This is a humble team, but they're brilliant, superb. They're by far the best in the state of Montana. So I couldn't be more proud of it. And this is a trust issue for our constituents. These financial statements, 35 years of awards, the budget document, 10 years of awards. This is a trust issue, and our transparency is very important to us, and these guys do a phenomenal job of that. So please don't let that go unnoticed.
Well said. Thanks for those comments, Mike. And this is an action item, so if there's a motion. Gary.
Yes, I move superintendent's recommendation that the board accept the 2023-24 annual comprehensive financial report and audit report.
Second.
I heard seconds come from everywhere. Motion made by trustee Lucine, seconded by trustee Bertelson. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you very much.
Julia, may I have a hard copy? Thanks. I'm embracing my inner Douglas Fisher.
Across town. You want one for Douglas, Sandy?
Sure.
No, you don't have to. Yeah.
He's got the city one on his.
Right.
We've done it this week.
Yeah. Up next, board discussion, item 5.3, LRSP Student Wellbeing Goal and Action Plan. Superintendent Bertram.
Thank you, Chair Neal. As you know, during the LRSP community revision process, there was a goal placeholder put in place for student well-being to respond to what we know are challenging times for our student community, specifically in terms of mental health concerns, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. To bring that goal to fruition and to build an associated action plan, we brought together a group of 17 community stakeholders, parents, school counselors, school administrators, Wilson staff, as well as many community partners, and trustee D wore multiple hats as a parent and a trustee on that committee. That group met 3 times during the fall for about 16 hours and then came together via consensus process on a draft LRSP goal and an associated action plan. That group put together the document you have linked in the agenda that was shared with our parents and community on Friday, and then we will walk through it this evening. All parts of that. we can hold questions at the end, or we can take them as we go. We have this kind of broke into some sections, and then we've saved the best for last. So we have some students in the room that were part of that working group, and I'm very appreciative of them being here. I know finals are approaching, and it's a busy time for high school students. I have some more open-ended questions for them, and what you will quickly figure out is they are much more articulate than I, and they have taken their role on this stakeholder group, caring about the mental health of their peers very, very seriously. And I'll ask them some questions. You can interact with them at the end. So, Johanna, if you want to jump to that one of the microphones, that'd be great. Yeah, Mr. Van Vieren will, I think, is doing the scrolling, so he's your go-to over there.
Thank you for having me today.
Johanna, if you hit the button that has the person on it, it'll turn green, and then speak into there. There you go.
There we go. All right, does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to share some data pertaining to mental health trends in both our middle school and high schools over the course of the last 12 years. The data that we're seeing here today is derived from the Youth Behavior Risk Survey. This is a survey that's given every other year to a subpopulation of students. The number of students that take this survey range between 100 students and 150. So I urge that you do not overinterpret any individual year's data. The data has value when it's used comparatively or to develop trends, more so than to establish any specific significant meaning for any individual school year. The first graph, I'll go ahead and explain something else too. The questions that they ask on the YRBS are modeled after our understanding of an escalation related to mental health symptoms that start with, the general understanding is that when you have suicidal ideation or suicidal behaviors, those are the result of an escalation from a state of depression to a desire to be dead, to suicidal ideation, to the creation of a suicide plan or method for considering how one would attempt suicide, to actual attempts, and then attempts that result in injury. So that's the general understanding of the behavioral pattern that results in suicidal thinking and suicidal behaviors. The YRBS models its questions off of that understanding, starting with questions about depression. The way they phrase that question is about all the questions are about the last 12 months. And in the last 12 months, did you ever feel so sad or hopeless every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that you stopped doing some usual activities? This is based in our shared understanding in the field of psychology about what sort of constitutes a behavioral pattern representing depression or depression-like symptoms. This first chart that you will see in the orange, and every chart subsequent in the orange color, is middle school data. So this is a combination of the data that we get from CJMS and SMS. And then just so you know, the x-axis remains the same, ranging from 2011 to 2023, the survey being given every other year. The y-axis does change, so kind of be attentive to that. This y-axis tops out here at 30%. But you'll see that during the past 12 months, students at our middle school level felt so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row. So symptoms of depression so this most recent data set from 2023, that number is 28.95% of students endorsed that item, said that they did feel that way. If you scroll down to the following graph, over the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? That number there, it tops out at, let's see, middle school is 17.83%. And then scrolling down further, during the past 12 months, how many times did you actually So we went from depression to seriously consider attempting suicide to actual suicide attempts. And the suicide attempts, the resulting number for our middle schools was 14.29%. All of these trends over time indicating, despite some variability from year to year, indicate an increasing trend in both depression symptoms and suicidal thinking and suicide attempts. And these two charts, so there was a little reversal here, but suicide plan and then suicide attempt. But if you scroll down further, going to the purple graphs, this is the combination of our high school data, so a combination of Bozeman High and Gallatin High School. For years previous to when Gallatin High School was established, the data is just representative of our high school population overall, so Bozeman High. And you'll see that these numbers indicating depression symptoms among our high school students, the most recent year data shows that that number is 36.25%. And then that highest number there in 2019 was 42% of our student population that was surveyed said that they were experiencing depression symptoms. One graph further down with multiple different colors. This is a comparison chart with Bozeman High School, or Bozeman High School population compared to Montana High School, which is in the green, and national data, which is in the yellow. So you'll see that our data, local data, is pretty commensurate or expected based on national trends.
Gary.
Thank you. When you cite a percentage of our student population, does every student take this survey, or it's how many students are taking it?
Great question. So the student population that's surveyed is selected by OPI, and it's a population between 100 and 150 students. And it's said to be, it's a sample that they try to make representative of the overall high school population in terms of gender, racial identity, those sort of demographic features.
Tanya.
On the previous slide in the purple, for example, you've got the dotted line going in an upward trend.
Yes.
Could we not also have a downward line from 2019? I mean,
yes.
I'm trying to see the world with a little bit more optimism this week, and it's day one of that.
I give you full permission to make that interpretation. If I was to have chosen, if we were to have chosen to look at this data starting in 2019, we could pat ourselves in the back and say, hooray, we're solving the problem. If we're looking at the data from 2011 and onward, the decline in the self-reported rates of depression are not so steep that they compensate for the trend from the previous years. So statistically speaking, from 2011, we're still, we would still expect on a basis of statistical significance for this to be an increasing trend. And you can see just as easily, we're doing this survey screen again this year, so 2025 data will be coming to us in 2026, or at the beginning of the next school year, so the 2025-2026 school year, ideally in the fall. If we had another data point showing a decline in those reports, we'd see that line beginning to stabilize. But yes, certainly you can look at it that way, and we can feel positive about that. And there's other trends that are suggestive of perhaps some improvements. I would love to say that these are representative of a more permanent trend in a positive direction, showing improvements. We just don't have enough data to say that just yet. The next chart that you'll see is considering suicide, again showing a declining, an overall declining trend. So not again, excuse me. This one is, you'll see that despite some variability, overall, aside from whatever was happening in 2019 with the cohort of students that was surveyed, we have an overall decline. The following graph is, again, comparative from our local population of Bozeman students to Montana High School and national data on considering suicide, and you'll see that our data is representing a different trend. at this point than what is happening in Montana and nationwide. And then we have the data for suicide plan and suicide attempts. At the high school level, both suicide plans and suicide attempts are showing a decreasing trend overall, again, with some variability within the data. And similarly, the same is true with suicide attempts, which are decreasing. So, again, I'd like to conclude that, something we're doing in the district or, some sort of effort that we've taken is, despite not impacting depression rates, perhaps we're creating more resiliency or more coping tools or something that is not resulting in what we would expect to see match those increasing rates of depression and suicidal ideation and suicidal behaviors. But we don't have enough data yet to support that. Maybe in a few additional years, we can say more conclusively that we have reasons or an expectation that trend will continue. Any questions about these data?
Gary.
Thank you. Kind of hesitate asking this question, but do you have any data on the number of students that actually committed suicide?
On suicide deaths, yes, we are aware of students within the district who have died by suicide. Yes. I'm not sure if that's confidential information or information I'm allowed to share. Right? It's a small enough number that I feel like it would be a disclosure.
Yeah, Trustee Lucine, those numbers are under 10, so disclosing the number may identify the family. So we can get you the exact number behind the scenes if you need it.
Yeah. I'm glad to say that we don't have so many that we can't keep track. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, is that it? Okay, thanks, Johanna.
I think you have the next piece too.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Let's see, what am I doing? Oh, I do, yes, okay. We also, as part of our well-being working group, we read a book in common to help guide some of our conversations on action items. The book that we read was The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist. I think many of you are familiar with this book and perhaps have already read it. The book has some general recommendations for some of the trends that we're seeing. Specifically, the author relates these increasing rates of depression and suicidal thinking and behaviors and other concerning trends in mental health, including rates of anxiety. He ties those to specific changes in technology around specifically the front-facing camera and cell phones with social media abilities loaded onto them. So I know phones have been around for a long time, and that we might expect that we would have seen this trend begin earlier when, maybe we had the ability to dissociate in our hands. Really, he ties those to some of those technological changes that create alternatives to some of the positive social things that we know are positive for mental health and combat the kind of social isolation. So his recommendations, his concluding recommendations are that we establish phone-free schools, that we allow more unsupervised play and promote childhood independence, that we not allow smartphones before high school, and that young people should not have access to social media before the age of 16. So these were all recommendations that we discussed in our well-being committee and considered as being potential actions that we could take or promote in our community in order to address increasing mental health trends. If we continue to scroll down, you'll see some of the data that Jonathan Haidt presents in his book, The Anxious Generation, which shows some similar trends to what we see in our local data, but has the added benefit of having more population, and he does comparative evaluations for communities in different countries. So we know that this is something that is not specific to the United States. Even most countries that have access to the same forms of technology are struggling with the same issues. So these graphs demonstrate increasing rates of depressive episodes amongst boys and girls, increased anxiety rates, increased self-harm, and increased suicide rates. Just so for some background information, we see particular rates of high rates of self-harm among girls. And I know that a lot of the media coverage of the impacts of social media have to do with the targeting of girls by social media companies and the algorithms that undermine self-esteem. We know that these are phenomenon that are also impacting boys. One of the things that we also know about suicide in the United States and elsewhere is that even though girls attempt suicide about 3 times more often than boys do, boys complete suicide at a higher rate because they're more likely to use lethal means. So that's an explanation for why the suicide rate seems particularly escalated in a male population. So these are, just additional data to support the idea that the phone use and social media use are at least correlated with mental health outcomes. There's a lot of other research if you're interested in seeing some causal elements. So we have enough information to suggest that not only are these things related to each other and happening at the same time, but that one predicts the other. Any questions? Sorry.
I was just going to say thank you.
Thank you.
If there are not trustee questions, we'll keep rolling.
Thanks, Johanna.
Thank you.
After robust and very, very thoughtful discussion, the working group developed the following measurable goal that's tied to the YRBS question on self-reported depression symptoms. By 2031, fewer than 15% of students will self-report depression symptoms as measured by the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. This percentage represents an almost 60% decrease in self-reported depression symptoms at the high school level and an almost 50% decrease at the middle school. It's really important to recognize that the language in the goal was very, very specific, and we had a lot of discussion about it. The language recognizes that completely eliminating self-reported depression symptoms is not possible. It's not realistic because in any typical population, there is a percentage that will experience clinical depression and anxiety. The goal, though, is a stretch goal because it sets a bar that is well below historical lows in district data and certainly closer to data points identified in the anxious generation that were prior to the switch from a play-based to a phone-based childhood.
Okay, next up are the action steps as we go here. So, excuse me if I get the scroll and the talk coordinated. So the first, as we move forward, as you mentioned, the goal is only as good as the action steps set forth to achieve that goal. So we're going to talk about those action steps that the group, after developing that goal, discussed moving forward. So the first one, the first category is under student health and well-being, and the discussion around cell phone policy and usage in schools was a big discussion and a lot of discussion around how do we action plan around that. So the first recommendation is that we don't make any changes for next year to our cell phone policy. These recommendations are for the 26-27 school year. And that is to move to a phone-free high school environment, subsequently being phone-free at all levels, because currently in both our elementary and middle school environments, those devices need to be out of sight during instructional time and during passing time as well. So looking at the 26-27 school year for the phone-free high schools, and two major reasons for that. One is that we still need to engage our community around this discussion, right? We've had community members in the smaller group, but we need to engage the greater community in these discussions. And then also some of the options for moving forward with phone-free school environment has a financial tag to it as well. So it'd give us an opportunity to do fundraising around that. Any questions around phone-free schools?
Leanna.
Can you explain those pouches? That's what you're referring to as the cost? Like, I don't think I understand what.
Yeah, I think there are many avenues to achieve phone-free schools. So currently, we are operating as phone-free instructional environment at the high school, and teachers have access to caddies where you could, like a calculator caddy or a phone caddy, and different teachers handle it differently. Yonder pouches, in the national conversation around phone-free schools, what tends to bubble up is parent pushback in those communities around emergency access to phones. And while we argue that in an emergency we don't want students on their phones, there's a place to catch up with parents at some point in that emergency protocol and process. Yonder pouches are a way to keep the phone on the person. So imagine a holster for your phone that has a magnetic lock on it, and you create a phone-free environment. So when you walk through the front doors of Bozeman High School, you put your phone in the pouch and it's magnetically closed. The magnetic opening mechanism is mounted on the outside of the school. It's mounted in the parking lot, and so when students leave the instructional environment, go to open campus lunch, head home for the day, they have multiple opportunities on their way out the door in the parking lot to unlock their phone. Teachers would also have the Yonder pouch locking mechanisms in their emergency backpacks. So if we went to an evacuation site and there was a point where we needed to reconnect students with families, they can unlock their phones that way. There's a financial cost to Yonder pouches, and before we take that on as a district or engage in community fundraising, there's also some money in the governor's budget for phone-free schools. We want to thoroughly vet Yonder pouches in terms of whether they are the solution. We're looking at our high school admin team, Dan and Erica possibly taking some field trips to Yonder schools and districts to look at what it really looks like and to ask the questions that you don't get answered from the salesman trying to sell you it.
Gary, sorry.
I had a
Trustee
follow-up question on that.
Leanna.
Sorry. So, and is it likely that when we want to implement that the technology on that would change and that there would be something, do you get what I'm saying?
Certainly the technology will change, yes, and so we'll be monitoring that and are hopeful that some cost-effective solutions come down. Yonder pouches are not particularly expensive, but it's an annual cost similar to a cost for issuing a Chromebook to a student, and the idea would be that a high school student would get their Yonder pouch as a freshman and use it throughout their career. And we are aware of some school districts that have engaged in community marketing around that. So it's Yonder pouch is brought to you by name the business entity in the community, and there's some opportunities there that we could look at.
Gary.
Yeah, thank you. Could you remind us what the cell phone policy is in elementary, middle, and high school?
Yeah, elementary and middle school is basically out of sight. And so students keep them in their backpacks at the elementary school. At the middle school, they can be in backpacks or lockers, and they're not used during the instructional day at all. They're not used at recess. They're not used at lunch. The high school current policy is that we're discouraging cell phone use during instructional periods. And so if you walk the halls of our high school during a passing period, it's similar this is Students aren't the only ones that are using their phones on a consistent basis, so it'd be like walking through the airport. You're going to see a lot of people, students and staff, on phones during passing times and at lunch periods. This recommendation is to say, once you walk in the doors of our high schools, it's a phone-free environment similar to our elementary and middle schools, and that you're not using them during passing times, not using them during lunch, and we're trying to alleviate the damaging impact of social media and the addiction piece of it by breaking that from 8 to 3:30.
Okay, I'm going to continue with the action plan. I do want to take a step backwards, and I think really important too, as our discussions around action plan happened, is that not first and foremost, but an important factor is that we understand in this action plan, these action steps start to lay it out, that student mental health is a community issue that is not something that as a school district we can solve and impact solely alone. We're going to need work with our community as we're moving forward. So that's why you're going to see a lot of community parts to these action steps as we move through it. So next, under the student mental health and well-being, is continuing forward with our multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS, and really working on building those structures out more robustly, but also identifying what are the barriers for students accessing those supports within schools. We heard from the student reps couple different times that there are barriers for accessing counselors at schools for whatever reason. And so how do we look at those systems to provide more opportunity for students to access the supports that are there? Additionally, that would mean, how do we start to look at the roles? For example, our counselors at the high school have so much on their plate right now. And so how do we start to reimagine those roles in the school so they could maybe provide more support for our students in this realm?
I'll add to that. We talked about, if you take a university system, for example, if you need mental health counseling, you go to one place. If you need academic advisory or change your schedule, you go to a different place. So they recognize that there's a dual, two functions of what we jam into the job description for a high school counselor. And we find that managing a comprehensive high school with lots of students, and then as we take on things like CTE and workplace apprenticeships and all of those things, it adds to the load of the school counselor trying to navigate just getting kids in the right classes. Our school counselors are also very engaged in writing letters of recommendation for their students. And so we're exploring, we don't feel like we can add anything additional to a school counselor's plate. So it's how do we do scheduling and how do we do mental health services for students within the district.
And then additionally, in this section, the community engagement piece is support the work that Gallatin County Behavioral Health Coalition is working on to expand community supports for mental health services for everyone in our community. And then also look at what are some possible legislative changes that we could help support and impact as well. The next recommendation is wait until 8th, and this is really a parent-driven initiative, but our role as a school district is to put together the communication packet that we could share out with our parent advisory committees at all of our elementary schools, high schools, and middle schools. And so it's a program that where parents can get together and rally around not allowing smartphone access until 8th grade, until after 8th grade. Oops, sorry. Thank you. Then we'll move on to the next section, which is student social skills independence. And so curriculum resources, it came front. There's a number of programs that are available that schools can engage in. And so all of them have curriculum resources. And so part of our commitment to making sure that the resources we have are meaningful for our students is just the vetting process. And so a commitment to vet through our supplemental resource process, programs that identify student independence and resiliency, such as Let Grow Experience for both our middle school and elementary age students. ensure that we're going through a process for a new social emotional learning resource at the middle school, making sure there are aspects of these recommendations in that primary core resource as we're vetting through that process as well. And then making sure that the adoption process is accessible when we have programs that come forth that we think are a reasonable program that we can have, that we're adopting those according to our practices, our policies and procedures. Then we have peer-to-peer suicide prevention. Hope Squad was a big discussion around, and that's, groups of students are nominated by peers, trained to recognize signs of distress and connect with peers to help. In the past, we've had robust peer-to-peer programming, and so this would be a way to get back to that, and it'd be focused on the needs of our mental health needs of our students and their peers.
I'll add on that one. We know that can't be just an additional duty as assigned to our school counselors, saying, hey, please run the Hope Squad as well. So we are prioritizing FTE in our budget for that, but I will also be engaging with, we had many community partners who want to help. Some of those community partners, for example, Bozeman Health, I'll be approaching around possible partnership to fund FTE in this area.
Tanya?
I have a question. It says there that it's evidence-based that the Hope Squads have been effective in Montana schools. Can you give us an example of some of the school districts that have used the Hope Squads? And for how long?
I know that I've talked to someone multiple times about the success of this program in their district, and I just cannot remember which district it is, and it's not going to come to me right away. I can get you that information, but I know several superintendents have been advocating for this program across the state and sharing success stories with it. It's a unique program in that it focuses on building up students' toolkits who students already go to for support. So we identify peer leaders and give them this added toolkit to support other students in the school.
Thank you. I guess when you do that, I'd just be very interested in if there's multiple examples of success based on the size of the district and the size of the schools where it's being implemented.
So Lockwood?
Lockwood.
Yeah.
The last action step in this category is the Let Grow Play Club. Again, around Let Grow Play, you develop a communication packet that could be sent out to families, introduced to our PACs, and a major partner for this would be Gallatin, Greater Gallatin United Way Kids Link program, and implementing this program in there. And kind of a quick update to that, Mars and I had our monthly meeting with them last week, and we shared this as an option for them, and they're very excited about it. So it looks like this action step could almost be a checkbox because they're going to be looking for and moving forward with that piece of it. And then the last section is around community and family engagement.
Sorry, thanks. On the Let Grow program, was there a discussion how to collect data on that to know if it's being effective?
We've had conversations about how you measure data on all of these items. The community coalition around mental health, Kirsten, what's Kirsten's last name, Johanna? Smith. Yeah, Kirsten Smith has volunteered to help the district create the measurement tools associated with that. Those community organizations want that data as well. We had a long conversation about there's a lot of correlation data in the anxious generation, and then there's a variety of evidence-based tools. And so, yes, we want to measure it because we have fixed resources and want to make sure we're getting the most bang for the buck. The Let Grow Play Club is also one that is not really a district initiative. This is parents who are either via PACs, after school, play dates, those sorts of things, creating opportunities for their kids to engage in unstructured play without adults swooping in to solve all the issues. We do have a bit of a sample with the United Way Kids link where they can try to roll it out, and we could put some measurement tools there. That's a pretty good subset of our students that engage in that program after school.
Okay, our last section is around the community and family involvement, and the action steps include community presentation, so identifying groups that we would want to go and talk about this goal that we've set, and also the action steps that we've laid out. Student focus groups as we move forward, especially with the phone-free high schools, making sure that we have student voice in the room as we move forward. And again, that's a reason for that delay, not necessarily going to something right next year, but how do we engage our students and how do we engage our community? Staff presentations around the district, providing information around this goal and the action steps to all of our staff district-wide. Conduct surveys to make sure that we have, again, community input before we move to total high school, phone-free high schools is going to be tremendously important. I think early on in this process, Superintendent Bertram had mentioned failures of some districts jumping into something too quickly and not engaging their community and then wavering and going back and forth. And so we just want to make sure we do this well. And so whatever we land on and decide on, that it's going to stick and it's going to be sustainable moving forward. And then always the communication piece, right? And I think this board does a great job of honoring that communication piece, but constantly communicating this out as we're moving forward through these action plans.
I would add that Johanna Burtkin has already started meeting with PACS. I think you have 6 scheduled, or you've completed 6, if you want to talk to us about that briefly.
Sure, yes. Should I mic it up?
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, I visited with the Bozeman High School PAC, and upcoming I have dates scheduled to meet with Meadowlark and Highlight. I've also already met with Hawthorne and Morningstar parents to discuss the recommendations of the Anxious Generation and Wait Till 8th campaign and phone-free schools. The vast majority of PACs I have visited have been outspoken in their advocacy for this and how important they think it is. It's in those populations, it's been universally supported. I have not heard any comments from parents directly expressing major concerns about moving forward with any of these action items. I do know that the conversation about safety concerns has been pretty consistent, that there are some elements of trust building and workarounds for how to reach children, whether that's in an emergency or if somebody left their cleats at home, are going to be conversations around those things are going to be needed in the future. But we've had a lot of support from PACs in advocating for these issues. I would say that the dominant theme has been a sense of urgency about responding to the behavioral health data.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Also, I found out it's shared in schools also. So both of those different organizations have been using the Hope Squad.
If we could have the students in the room join us who are on the working group. We have a couple, these 2 tables have a microphone by them if you want to sit at one of those tables. If you click the button with the person speaking, it'll turn green. And first, if you just introduce yourselves, let us know, let the trustees know what school you're from, and then I'll jump into some questions.
My name is Taylor Trudgeon. I'm a junior from Bozeman High School.
Hi, I am Melina Maganito, and I am a junior at Gallatin High School.
And hi there, I'm Kay Braun. I'm from Gallatin High School. I'm a junior there.
Lauren was on this committee as well, and I can't say enough how valuable the student voice was during this process. We also had Liberty Steves representing Bridger Charter Academy as part of the working group. These students are bright, they're articulate, they care about their mental health and the mental health of their peers, and I think that'll come out today. In no particular order, if you just share your experiences, taking the information and the discussions from the working group back to your respective high schools, clubs, activities. Has it come up in conversations? How is that going? What kind of feedback are you receiving from high school students?
Yeah, I missed our last meeting, so I didn't see what we actually decided until just now. But I'm really happy because I really strongly believe that the phones need to be taken out. And I think more than just the impact in class when we're learning, the distraction is the social issue. And coming from middle school to high school, there was that big difference of in middle school. Like, I know kids have phones outside of school, but in school is where we socialize the most. And so from talking in the hallways in middle school to not doing that in high school was a big difference. And I do lead another club. And even at that club, even when we're like studying or just at that club, kids are like, we need a phone bin at this point. So kids even recommend themselves, like they know that it's a big problem. Yeah.
So I go to Gallatin High School, and the phone caddies have been a new thing that has been implemented just as of this year. And I feel like that has been very helpful within the classroom settings. And it's very good that there are no phones during that designated work time. I feel like Kay could talk about this a little bit too. But that's from the high school perspective. Not many kids at the very beginning of the school year, right when we started that change, there was a lot of confusion, and also many of the kids were not too happy that they had to put their phones away during class. But as the year has gone on, it has been easier for kids just to put down their phone, and if the teacher doesn't use the phone caddy, they still put away their phone for the entirety of the class period. And I feel like that has been a significant change since the last few years when kids would just have their phones out during class. And then as far as the middle school view, I was able to interview a few students from CJMS to ask what their roles in society with phones were, and how they feel like that impacted them and their mental health, along with their mental health of their peers. And they felt strongly that the depression and anxiety in middle school is quite high, and that not enough kids are getting that help for that mental stress that is being put on them, especially going through that transition from elementary school to middle school. I was also able to interview a few of the staff at Gallatin High School, and they feel that the phone caddies have also made a significant difference within classroom settings, and other staff who were not teachers, who did not use phone caddies, also thought that it was an amazing idea that it's been working in the classroom, and have been hoping to see that there could be a change as well within the entire school, like in the commons and during lunch, when kids would just be on their phones instead of socializing. And I heard a lot of back in my day, but it was certainly an experience to be within this group, and I express my gratitude to be here, and it was an honor to be part of this.
Hi there. I take a slightly different view in the phone caddy stance from Alina. I think the biggest issue in implementing all these is that there's going to be a large amount of pushback in anything we propose from both the student body and parents, especially when we take away things such as phones. It's such an integrated part of our society and of our community here. And especially students, when you're addicted to a cell phone, the last thing they want to do is be told to put it in a pouch and lock it away. Currently, I would say about half my classes there are phone caddies that are completely empty, and phones are stored in pockets. And if you look under the desks, you'll see Snapchat or Instagram or messages or whatever will be open and during the instructional time. And I think the data that was presented in both the anxious generation and throughout the school district data was mind-blowing to me. I've had personal experiences with peers who have struggled with mental health, including some who have died from suicide, and it's an incredibly, it's a really troubling problem, except the solutions are going to be really hard, and I would just suggest that to just communicate the best you can to the community, as having that buy-in throughout the community, throughout parents, throughout students is going to be crucial, that for the greater good, some limits are going to have to be placed on this technology. So, yeah.
I have one final question that I'm sure trustees have questions for you. If you want to kind of piggybacking on what you were just saying, we have the working group had a purposeful long runway to 26, 27, knowing that we needed to engage our community, and that's inclusive of parents, community members, and most importantly, our students. Any recommendations you have for how we can go about engaging our students? You had the luxury of spending 16 hours with a working group and looking at a lot of data and having deep, thoughtful, consensus-based conversations. That's hard to duplicate for thousands of students at the high school. So any feedback on, we know that knowledge and sharing knowledge with our high school students is going to be important, but what's going to win them over, and how do we get them on board?
I personally don't think the high school all the students will ever agree with this. And I'm really glad that they are not here right now watching this, because we would not be loved in this moment.
You're being recorded.
I am aware of that, yes. I think that we are high school students and we are young. And to be honest, this is not the main thing that most of us care about. I care a lot about this, but I can tell you that most kids don't. And I know that with a couple significant losses from Gallatin High recently, I know that really kind of hit into a couple kids, especially probably from your school. But I think that no matter what, someone told me this a while ago when I was thinking of this issue. They were like, in a leadership position, we are called to be peacemakers, not just peacekeepers. And sometimes that means going against what some people want, because there's always going to be pushback and there's always going to be conflict. And I think that's why it's really good that we're doing a 5-year goal, because for like that first 2 years, students are not going to love this, especially the students that have already been in high school and had phones in high school. I think for the upcoming students, like they never had phones in high school, and it's just like middle school. It's not going to be much different, and they wouldn't expect any different. But then I do think like in the next couple of years, we're going to see this social increase of people feeling less lonely. And I think that, yeah, informing the students of the statistics and that we're doing this for their better good and not just trying to punish them will help. But we already understand that social media is bad for us. I think we already have been told that. And so as hard as we try, like I think the school district can try a lot to remind students over and over that we're doing this for their better good. But I do think there will be that pushback. And so I do want to encourage you guys to remember that you're the adults, your brain is fully developed. And yes, our opinion matters, but we are the ones majorly addicted. So yeah, that's from a student perspective that I do think agrees with taking the phones out. Yeah, we are called to be peacemakers, not just peacekeepers. And I personally used to think that like peace was just avoiding all conflict. But sometimes when things slowly start going the wrong direction, we have to like stand firm, and there will be people who disagree. But I mean, I think that we're doing this for the better good of the students. And I mean, as a parent, most of you probably are parents, you understand that your children do get upset when they don't understand, but later in life they will appreciate it. So that is my input. They might not agree.
I completely and wholly agree with what Taylor has said, and then also Kay, but keeping communication open to all people within the community, I feel like is a very important aspect of what our goals are for this group. And I feel like I'm in AP psychology, so I'm studying social psychology right now, and just being consistent and confident within the skills and the data that we have, that we give to the general public about this, will definitely be helpful for those who need to adjust to this change. And like Taylor said, there is going to be pushback always, especially because as teenagers, our developing brains really do like social media, even though we do know that it is not the best thing for us. And yeah, I don't have much else to say. Thank you.
Actually, on my way here, I was talking to some of my peers about this, and I said, this is what we're planning to do. We're going to implement Yonder pouches. How do you feel about this plan? And they said, sounds great, but I feel like I'm going to be anxious without my phone. And I responded, well, that's kind of the problem. And that's the very thing that phones are so deeply rooted in our community at the moment that I think I agree completely and wholeheartedly with Taylor that the opinions of students matter, but at the same time, we are the affected group of people, and we need a group of people who is not addicted to our cell phones to step in, intervene. And my advice in communicating this to the students is that all students, no matter what, you're not going to be able to convince. There's going to be a large population who are going to be pushing back. But I believe that my peers are smart and they are receptive, and hearing that social media is bad or phones are bad isn't going to make an effect. But what did make an effect on me when I walked into this room and saw on those screens, 40% of my peers are depressed, 20% are considering suicide, 10% had made attempts. I think that when you see not just national, not just worldwide data, that our very peers around us who are probably sitting in our own room are experiencing these things, and we have a solution. I don't think that'll necessarily change our minds fully, but I think when you're able to see just how applicable this is and present a solution, high schoolers aren't, we have brains, and we're smart enough to understand that this is a solution to a very serious problem. And I think if there's clear communication and we're honest, we show them the raw data, we present the hard and cold facts, then I think there will be more of an open response, and there will be more receptiveness in the student body. So.
Thank you, and thanks to all three of you for participating. Appreciate it. Trustees, this is a discussion item. It'll come back as an action item in terms of formally approving the LRSP measurable goal and the action plan. So we would take, I would take any feedback on the goal, the action plan, and any additional questions you have for these students. When community members give me the kids these days garbage, I talk about kids like this.
Lauren?
I just really quickly wanted to reflect on my time on the committee, and it's interesting because as I was driving here, I was thinking, what did I take away? And I know I say this after every group I sit with that has students, but I just want to mimic that exact same sentiment. When people say kids these days, I'm like, you're not seeing the kids. I was inspired by each of you, all of your conversations, your rawness and your dedication to our time, and you came with your books full of sticky notes and ideas, and you were not afraid to speak a different side of things and stand out there and put yourself out there. And Liberty was unable to be here tonight, but at the end, when she was reflecting, she said, I didn't realize how much thought was put in from our side. And I think we always say we keep the kids in the center of the room, but it felt really good to hear her say that she saw that. But we also couldn't do it without your feedback, and that was a lot of time, and you guys dedicated that, and you continue to inspire us. I think almost all of us wrote down your quote, Taylor. But I just wanted to say thank you, guys. I really do appreciate it, and it does not go unnoticed.
Sandy?
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Black. Thank you very much for your contribution to this very important conversation and decisions, future decisions that directly affect you and your classmates. I really support the idea of taking the time to do it well and to think it all through and to respect the kids and where you are. And the one thing that I remembered, and Casey, you might remember this was at the Bridger Thanksgiving thing, because conversations, I witnessed a conversation between, it actually started with this young man looking at me and going, you're a trustee? And I said, yeah, I am. And he goes, you're going to take our phones away. And I'm like, what? I had like pumpkin pie at the time. And so sitting across from him was someone in leadership. And it was fascinating because she stepped in and he was irritated and he was worried, and I was like, okay. But then they stepped in and they had this conversation between the two of them, and they were on polar opposites at that point. I don't know what happened after that. Was that you?
That was her.
Oh! I don't know what happened after that, but he brought up some great points that you guys have brought up tonight, right? And I would not have witnessed it had it not been. And that conversation was, I think that's a key piece to this whole thing, because I'm pretty sure he might have heard a few things that you said, and you heard a few things that he said, and it was very respectfully done. It was incredible. So I just wanted to add that, and the fact that I'm really glad that we are taking the time to do this right, because there's so many things that have to be considered, So thank you for everything you've done. That's so funny.
Tanya?
First of all, thank you all for taking the time to serve on the committee, and Lauren, you too. I feel like my questions are about a year's worth of trying to catch up to you guys. But as you were talking, one of the questions I had was how this proposal, specifically the banning the phone piece, might impact different not socioeconomic, different demographics of our students. I was thinking, are the AP classes more likely to use the phone caddies than some of the other classes? Is that going to be an issue? Is it not? I know I'm asking you to look into a glass ball, but what do you see?
Being in many AP classes this year, I feel like I can't really speak from the other perspective as far as not AP classes, but as far as AP classes goes, phones are usually in caddies. I do have a few teachers who do not check for phones, but it is just accepted at that point that you are in in an AP class and you have to put the time and effort in order to learn this so you can do well in the exam in May. And I feel like we're all on that same page almost, and we're like a team trying to get to that final finish line. And so if my teacher doesn't look for phones, phones are almost always in backpacks. Like, they will not come out of a pocket at any time. I did have this one instance today, actually. There were maybe 4 phones in the caddy, and I was just surprised because I was like, okay, so there aren't many phones in the caddy. But then I look around, and everyone's just working on their work. They're helping each other out, and I feel like that sense of unity within AP classes is very special. And as far as the AP classes goes, the phone caddies are not a huge deal.
I will add that the AP classes in general, taking a AP class is, to most people, a choice that you're going to be committing yourself to a more rigorous curriculum. And generally, those students are going to be more engaged within school as a whole. And that you'll see that in more engaged populations, the phone problem isn't as pronounced. Whereas in more populations of students who are just there to get through high school and to move on to college or move on to trade school or wherever they go next, school is much less important to them. Learning that content, paying attention in class isn't as much of a priority. And I think that is the biggest group where the phone caddies, the yonder pouches will help, because the problem isn't the engaged AP students who are already not using their phones during class. It's the more unengaged student body. So, yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, well, thank you all for participating in this effort, and I think you've put yourself in a leadership role by your engagement in this, and all 3 of you speak very eloquently, and it's very inspiring. To me, to hear student voices, which we need to hear more of. And this is also something that, as we've heard, is going to take time. So I would encourage you to keep the conversation going among your peers and learn from them and try and persuade some who maybe are resistant to this to understand why this can benefit them, or set an example to them where you just put your phone away. But I want to thank you for this. So I do have one question. At what age were you when you got a cell phone?
That's funny you ask that. I have little cousins, and they just got watch phones, and they're trying to get real phones, and they're texting me, and they're like, what age did you get a phone? Because I want to get a phone. I got a phone right before 6th grade year, which is pretty young. But my parents are very strict parents, and so there were lots of restrictions on that phone. And watches like they have now weren't really a thing then, watches that you can call on. So it was more to keep in touch with me. But I know now there's like really smart watches that kids have for parents to track them. And then I wanted to reach back to what you had asked. I am the opposite of them. They are very smart. I am in 0 AP classes, and I am in 6 electives this year. So I finished my math early and my science early, and so I have combo this year, which is history and English combined, which is actually a BCA class where I might have met a lot of you. So I can also talk for BCA, but I think in our classes there's less of the push from the teachers because AP has to get more information through. So we do have more free time, and also AP is the students who are really smart, who want to go on to college, and you guys like put so much work and effort into your grades, which I so respect. But it's kind of the kids that are in the classes that I see where it's like, it's not that I don't care, but these kids that don't care, they kind of have all this free time and they don't really care about their grades or getting in trouble. And so you see the same kids getting their phones taken over and over, which is not typically the AP kids. Yes.
Okay, going back to the second question, I got my phone at the beginning, like a month before I started high school, but I'm young for my grade, so I got it at age 13. And I didn't really start using it until I turned 14, and that's when I started going onto YouTube, and that's like my form of social media. But I feel like it's affected me very negatively since, but there's also positive aspects of having a phone, like a calculator. So
I actually got my phone very young. I believe I was in 3rd or 4th grade, which is 9 or 10, I believe. And I remember getting my first social media in the beginning of COVID, which was the end of 6th grade, which was actually useful in a way for me because I was able to learn very quickly that I did not like social media and that it was not very useful, and I now don't have any of it, which is something that I think a lot of my peers will soon come to realize at some point in their lives. So.
Leona.
Well, I just want to thank the three of you so much for that time and effort, and very, very articulate and eloquently said. I appreciate how much that went into doing that, and also for Lauren for being on that. It is inspiring to hear what you're saying. Just a couple of thoughts to share. My kids are 19 to 26, and they're saying that they're the last generation of kids who will remember a time before social media, which I just kind of blew me away that has come up. And while I appreciate everything you're saying about how, like the pushback from your fellow students, I think I'm more thinking about the pushback from parents. And I mean, like there will be pushback from students for sure, but I feel like that's a different thing for us to think about and deal with than the pushback from the parents. I wondered if you had any thoughts or observations about that.
Yeah, we did talk about this on the committee about how it's a lot easier for a parent to just be like, okay, here's your phone, now go watch, social media. And it's a lot harder for that battle daily of the screen time, or you don't get a phone yet until 8th grade, if we want to encourage that for parents. And for that, we can't really help you guys. Good luck with that.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I don't have much to say about this matter. I do feel like there's going to be pushback from students and from parents. It would make sense, though, that parents would have a larger pushback, just because I feel like being protective over children is a very parental thing to do, and that is something that, many parents do, and having a phone on your kid to know that they're safe is always important, but then we can look at the yonder pouches and that could be solved. I don't have much to help out with the parent aspect of that.
I think my only input would be similar to what I had said about students, in that I think parents, just like students, have very heated emotions about this, especially in an era of gun violence and school shootings and whatnot. And I think it's understandable, but also I think parents are just as much worried about their children's mental health, and presenting the data, just like I had suggested to students, showing that 40% of students around their children or their family, friends, children are struggling with mental health issues, and the 10%, 20% suicidal ideation. Seeing that data, that's within this community around those parents. I think, yes, they'll feel passionate about not taking phones away, but they're also passionate about their students' well-being. And I think presenting that data, showing the problem raw, and presenting the solution very clearly and concisely, I think that would be the best. But besides that, you guys are kind of on your own, so.
Well, part of why I'm asking that is because, like, all of my kids did these programs where they didn't have access to their phone for a good 15 weeks, and it just sort of broke the cycle for them. So I actually find that my kids push me and my husband on our cell phone use, which is super interesting. So I was just thinking how inspirational you are. I think I could see that happening too, that the students could be inspiring their parents to do better with cell phones. That's just my one personal experience. So, but thank you.
Melissa?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank y'all. I'm thoroughly impressed with each and every one of you, and let's get this done.
Yeah, I appreciate this monumental effort in this process, and am fully behind the recommendations, and I'm also appreciative of the thought of doing it well and not doing it fast, and the student voices in this room I had been hearing, and now I fully understand why and how your voices are so valuable in this process, and I think we're going to need to continue to have student voices in this process to do our best job of creating community buy-in. And so thank you everyone who was a part of this, and really appreciate your time. So you're excused. Yeah.
All right.
Any
I just
final
wanted to say
comments?
thank you
Yes.
guys. Yeah. Thank you for all the work that goes into this. And thank you for having us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will take, thank you. Is there any public comment on this discussion item? Please come forward and have a seat at this table right here, sir. And I'll have you speak into the microphone and press the button on the right so it's green, and if you could give us your name and write down your name and address on that clipboard, please, as well. A lot of instruction. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Braun. Kay is my son. And I understand your concerns about wasting money and making some poor choices. But I also was concerned about no one mentioned the risk that is going to happen, because you're going to lose students who might have been saved. So maybe there's a compromise there where this data, as Kay was mentioning, I mean, it's shocking. Get it out. Get our community talking about it. And then maybe long-term, the budget and those other things. But I was really concerned about there's going to be some funerals that might have been avoided. That's all.
Thank you. If you could please write down your name on that clipboard. Thank you. Is there any further public comment on this discussion item? Seeing none. Tanya, did you raise your hand? Yes.
I did. Is it okay to give a thought?
It is, yes.
I'm really moved by this LRSP goal. I feel inspired and nervous the way I was when we were taking on early reading literacy goals and the discussions we had around percentages and was it doable and was it not doable. And my big concern was trying to get the community involved in it because I see this as such a huge effort. And every conversation I think I've had so far this year has resolved around the need for community. The Surgeon General gave a letter last week to the American people as a farewell address, and he mentioned that relationships, service, and purpose create an ecosystem of meaning and belonging that are essential for our survival. And I just think what I heard from these students today and from you, sir, it feels like we are doing this at the right time. It might be a little late, honestly, but I don't think in Montana it could have come sooner. So I just want to say thank you for all of the work that's going on. I'm really excited to see who our community partners might be in this. I'm thinking of county extension agents, 4-H, church leaders, nonprofit leaders. I just think this is going to be a rally cry that we can have something positive to really be looking forward to. And yes, it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's one of the best ones we've taken on in a really long time. It feels really good. And I think it's also really apropos that you brought these students in here and this goal and that budget just before we move into talking about your evaluation. You couldn't have landed it more perfectly, Casey.
Any further discussion? Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks, Johanna. Up next, item 5.4, 2024-2025 Superintendent Summative Evaluation. Vice Chair Black and I bring forward this final step of the superintendent evaluation process this evening for board discussion. This will be Superintendent Bertram's third summative evaluation, which culminates annually after completing the formative evaluations throughout the year. We will begin tonight's discussion by hearing Superintendent Bertram's update on his professional goals and any other comments he wishes to make. We will then take comments and discussion from trustees. This is a discussion item only, so no motion will be needed. Superintendent Bertram, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Neal. Mr. Van Buren, if you go to the link in number 3 and scroll to page 8. Yep, right there. This is a summary of the rubric. So thank you, trustees, for completing the blind rubric. Thank you to Lori Ross for compiling it all into the summary rubric. What you see is that my self-assessment on the left and the trustee assessment on the right, we are on the same page, which is good for multiple reasons. I think I also want to draw attention to the bottom of that rubric. Trustee scores of my performance are getting higher over time, which hopefully equals I'm doing a better job over time. If you go down to page 9 and 10, there's a review of, and that's tiny, I need to pull it up here so I can. Just an update on professional learning goals. So the first goal was around LRSP staff well-being goal. A lot went on behind the scenes for that goal over the course of the first half of the school year. So we moved to a new staff school climate survey that was given in October. We had 78% response rate. We now have sites doing site-based conversations at all 12 school sites. We've created a template for unpacking conversations. Part of that template, the final 5 questions, are to help generate ideas and feedback for the consensus group that will come together on April 3rd and 4th. So we're in the process of completing all the site-based unpacking conversations and then convening on April 3rd. The timing of that is very purposeful. It's later in the legislative cycle, so we'll have a better understanding of what's going on with our budgets. And then it's prior to negotiations. And so those that consensus process will be discussing how do we increase staff well-being, and if it with things that don't cost money, and how do we increase staff well-being with items that may need to be negotiated in the next, in May. So that's where we're at on that goal. That LRSP group will be the group that creates, similar to what you just heard this evening, they'll create the draft long-range strategic plan goal and the associated action plan that'll come back to trustees for final approval at the end of the year. Learning goal 2 was everything we just discussed. I won't jump into any more detail there, but that's the student well-being goal. I can say that we have the right people in the room. I can tell you that we had some community partners that were not in the room that we need to engage with around this topic, and we'll begin to do that work around ownership of different aspects of it, financial ownership of parts of it, and we really need to develop Johanna is great in front of a PAC audience of parents. The challenge with those presentations is she's preaching to the choir in most of those instances. And so the families that are largely supportive of everything we're doing, that have already read The Anxious Generation, that wanted cell phones out of their homes long ago, they show up to those meetings, and the bigger, probably bigger group that are just trying to do the challenging job of parenting, they're not able to attend those meetings. So we have a long way to go to engage our community. I'm appreciative to hear that the board is willing to go slow on this, and we will get it right. That's the update on the goals. I can tell you that I did read all of your comments and all of your scores. I appreciate all of the feedback. I see some clear next steps for me is trying to do the challenge of balancing visibility in our schools, which is an important part of this job, with all the other things that I'm doing. And so managing and advocating and problem solving and building and communicating, all of that takes time. I think a lot of that goes on behind the scenes and is unnoticed I know it's noticed by this Board of Trustees. It's can be very unnoticed by the community, and so they judge the success or lack thereof of a superintendent by visibility. So I need to wrestle through that and figure that out. And we're making, I'm making some very purposeful changes in the organizational chart that will give me some flexibility to do that, with Mr. Waterman taking on some communications, allowing me to focus more on, it's funny that we just talked about this, but the social media aspect of communicating in our community and getting into all of our buildings, because it does have value. With that, I'm open to any feedback you have. This will come back as the whole completed package with board leadership, kind of summarizing it. Will come back for board approval at a later date.
And I'll just, to lay some groundwork's a weird word, but I'll use the word groundwork. We've all filled out the evaluation. We've all made our comments on the evaluation. No one needs to feel pressure to make comments for the sake of making comments. But that said, if trustees have comments or any discussion or anything at all, now is the time. Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Thinking about this the last few days, looking at the rubric we use to evaluate you, to me, that's what we expect you to do from the long-range strategic plan and what your goals are. Probably the most important thing to me is how that's done. And I think that's, somewhat difficult to measure, but I think how you do things, to me, is critical. And I think you do a very good job. I've concluded the last few years the job of superintendent is very difficult. A lot of challenges. And how an individual in that position gathers information from all entities, communicates that, and then has the ability to make a well-thought decision about things, is that's how we're going to get all those things done. And I'm totally on board to support you any way I can to move all this forward. I think it's valuable for us to do. And I appreciate your vision of how to get things done, how to have transition schedules within our admin and school to keep things stable. And that's one thing I like about this is, yes, we have challenges on, every day as things come up, but overall, I think we're pretty stable. And I think we have good leadership with you and with our admin, a good team, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Kevin.
Well, looks like this agenda item, we lost everybody, Casey, so I think that's probably been typical.
And they shut the door.
Yeah. But I would just add one, I mentioned in this past, I think, one, you're the leader of the district, but I always appreciate how you're very inclusive of that leadership, of the team that you have around you and how they support you and how you support each other. And I feel like also that trickles down into all of our schools as well. And so that's one of the things that I continue every time when we do these evaluations. It's kind of in here, but it's not completely in here. But that's really important to me to see that your ability to lead, but also allow people to lead in their own areas of expertise and give them the power to go make their own decisions so you don't have to do everything. I know I heard you and tonight just mention, and I know it's been something that you've been considering and thinking about. The reason that I've heard you also say it's important to get in the classrooms and get into the schools, and I know there's not always enough time, and I appreciate you trying to figure out a couple ways, because what I've heard you say is that those are the things that you enjoy. You enjoy seeing the teachers, you enjoy seeing the students in that atmosphere. So that's, to me, is probably why I would push you more in that direction. And it sounds like you're putting things into place for that, and I appreciate that. But because I know what Gary said is there's a few challenges, but all the challenges that come across your desk aren't always the easiest and the best ones. So, and I can reflect on my own experience of being in the board, as I've mentioned in the past, getting into the schools and actually seeing what's going on is, unfortunately for all of you guys sitting at this table, this is not the why. This meeting's not the why. It's getting in the classroom and seeing what everybody's doing and how passionate and amazing they are. So I just encourage you to continue and to work towards that goal and have some of that, because to me, for myself, that's pretty powerful, and I think I've heard your words say the same thing. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Before, Lori, would you mind opening that door? I think we're technically supposed to have that door open. I'm just asking you because you're the closest. Thank you. Sandy.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. And just in summary, I've watched you connect more dots than I believe have been connected in the entire time I've been on the board. The main thing is the main thing, keeping the main thing has always been not said, but it's very apparent in your actions. And the other thing that I really appreciate is your ability to pivot. And I was sitting here thinking about the first time I really saw that. And it was when we were trying to come, it was during COVID, and you'll all remember this. We were coming back from, and we were trying to have the meeting at Gallatin High, and something blew up for us right in front of us. And we had no expectation. It was about 3610, and we had no expectation that was going to happen. And you leaned into me and you just said, I think we need to table this. We need to look at this some more. And that was the first time I saw you pivot and say, look, we got to change something here and take a second look at that, which led to a lot of community conversations and better understanding about the word equity and so on and so forth. And you've done it. You've led with courage and conviction on the things that you knew in your heart and your mind. That's what we should do for kids. And then you very easily recognize when I need to know more or we need to do more work on this. And you have the courage to do that too, because a lot of people don't. They don't. And so that to me is something that I would encourage you to feel very comfortable doing, because I trust that you will do the right thing at the right moment. But so I thank you for everything you've done. If I may just pivot back to the conversation before so I don't forget, may I?
Yes.
Okay. Rural schools and this cell phone thing too is there. I just want to plant that, because as we move towards that, and I know you have meetings with the rural school superintendents, that might help them transition into this whole thing too. I don't know if you've already done that or not, but it just came into my mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're taking the route of a lot of those, like wait until 8th and the community presentations that Johanna's doing. In our partnership with the foundation, all the super PAC meetings now, we're inviting the rural school super PACs, the PACs as well. So they're getting all the same
Nice.
information. In terms of the our local rural school superintendent meetings, they've dwindled over time as Four Rivers Mass has gotten stronger. And so we are having some of these conversations at Four Rivers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It just crossed my mind. So thank you for everything you do.
Liana. No, you go. Yeah.
I don't want to repeat what everybody has said, because I 100% agree with all the points that have been brought up so far and how much I appreciate you. I just want to add that, and I don't mean to be a broken record when I say I work in districts everywhere, and it wasn't until being on this board that I realized how much lands on you and what you're called to do and what you want to do. And I think regularly I'm just so impressed with the depth and the care that you handle that. I think the thing that speaks to me the most is when it comes right down to it, you talk about the kids. And like recently we had a conversation about legislation, and it just came down to, it's not even that it's political or it's polarizing, or whatever comes up in the culture about things. It's just like the number one thing is, is this good for kids or is this going to harm kids? And I so deeply appreciate how that is the thing. Yeah, and we're so fortunate to have you. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting reading the summary of comments on the rubric of all the trustees' comments next to each other and looking at the scores and seeing overall improvement, starting from a healthy, high-performing, high-scoring place in the first place 3 years ago, and then up to now, and then seeing the comments, which there was variation in the comments for sure, but there was also, I thought some uniformity in the trustee comments, where I've kind of used this phrase in the past, but I feel strongly that your leadership has us as a board unified, which optics are important with a school board, and I feel like the organization that is Bozeman School District sees our board as a unified board because of how you do your job, and all the things that are involved with that, with the collaboration through PLCs and the culture of consensus that that you have taken and enhanced and improved with the organization, along with not being all over the map with how you conduct yourself, the way that you conduct yourself strictly on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, in accordance with what this board has tasked you to do. And so I just want you to know that I'm grateful for your leadership and for having you as a human being at the helm, and really appreciative of the trust that is in place with all stakeholders because of how you conduct yourself professionally. And so great job. Keep it up. Any further comment? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. 5.5, legislative update.
Just a second. So the 25 session is up and running, and it happens really quick. Couple points we wanted to bring up. One, we're aware that our respective camps, organizations, whether it's MASBO sending information to Lacey and Mike, or school administrators of Montana Rob sending to Mike Van Buren and Mars and I, or MTSBA. We have high-quality educational advocates that are watching things on our behalf and sending out communication. And I know we're all attending different weekly events and getting different email trails from our respective organizations, and that's important. I can tell you that I've tasked Mr. Waterman in particular with paying attention to items that may differ for AA schools or may differ for Bozeman Public Schools. And so we're keeping kind of behind the scenes a small list of items that are very much tied to our two things. They're either tied to our your resolutions that are important to the priorities of the school board, or they could have challenges for our district in particular for a variety of reasons. So we're paying attention to those. We'll talk about those when we have these legislative updates. And there may be a point on some of those where individual trustee advocacy and or resolutions from this board become apparent or applicable. I don't think we have any of those right now. I think there's a couple that we're watching. One, if you want to jot down notes, one is House Bill 121 that has gone through committee that is around transgender legislation in public spaces, including public schools. We have concerns about constitutionality, very similar, almost exact law passed in Idaho was immediately enjoined from enforcement by the Ninth Circuit. Montana's in the Ninth Circuit as well. The Ninth Circuit has consistently upheld the rights of transgender students. The reason we're watching it carefully is we're already in a situation where state law and federal law or federal case law are on two polar opposites, which puts schools in an impossible situation to manage. We have concerns with practicality in terms of staff within buildings, all of our staff being tasked with enforcing the law, and how would a staff member know the biological sex at birth of any individual in a restroom or locker room space? Because it's predicated on Montana law that it says it's your chromosomes or biological sex at birth. And so we feel like it puts our staff in a pretty tricky spot to know all those answers all the time. And then probably most important to me is it targets one group of students. And we feel like it's challenging to uphold a non-discrimination policy, and then have legislation that purposely targets one group of students. So we're watching that one. Another one is House Bill 20, which requires voted levies to be in dollars rather than mills. There was the camps group put out some information early on that said this is not applicable to Montana's public schools. And we, Mike Waterman in particular, responded that it is applicable to Montana public schools. We have a technology levy and a safety levy on purpose tied to mills, that as our tax base grows, it will grow. This one we'll continue to monitor. If it is passed and there's nothing retroactive in it, it's not going to impact us. Our safety levy is a permanent levy, and if it doesn't go backwards. However, it would impact other school districts that choose to go down that road. And so it may be one where some advocacy around this is good for Montana's public schools could be needed. One to watch. The final one is House Bill 156. I'll let you talk about that one, Mike. I'm not up to speed on that one.
I'll just be brief on this. This changes our general fund mills to being equalized on a district-by-district basis to a county-wide basis. The point of that one is to kind of spread the wealth a little bit and make things a little bit more uniform across 56 districts, or I guess it would be 56 districts, one per county for these equalization purpose rather than 1 to 400. For 400 school districts. The reason I put it on this list is because there's another, not because of the countywide equalization issue, that's something obviously to keep an eye on, but it would also change the way that we account for tuition from our non-resident students. That could have an impact on our voted levy requests and the amount and the taxpayer impact of those. So that's the reason I added that one to that list, something to monitor at this point. I'm not taking a position on it one way or the other.
I would mention that the big item that all of the camps groups are talking about, and there's been a lot of think tank Thursdays around the STARS Act. We don't have that on this list because it's all of the groups are supporting it and trying to move it forward, and it has a lot of people behind it. And so we're choosing to pay attention to ones that are that we need to pay attention to as a school district. And as this list grows, we'll keep you in the loop on it. And if it gets to a point where board leadership feels like we need to have trustees engage in some of these more formally, we can talk about that process.
Casey, can I add something to the Senate Bill 121 thing?
Yeah.
We've had some conversations with regards to the short title on that one is Preserve Privacy in Certain Restrooms, Changing Rooms, and Sleeping Quarters. And it seems to us, as we have some conversations, that a lot of the issues are around those particular facilities, restrooms, sleeping rooms, and changing rooms, locker rooms. As we look for solutions to these things, as we look for ways forward in this, there's state money assigned for building projects, and there's within the building projects list, there's certain things that are allowable costs. Bulletproof glass is one example, roofs, those types of things. There's nothing that allows the state funding to be used for making restrooms more private, making locker rooms more private. So a potential solution to this would be, it doesn't have a state cost, but would be to expand the allowable use of that state facilities money to allow schools to do some improvements to their restrooms to make them more private for all users. And we're not trying to single out a group when we talk about that. It would be for all users. Allow those existing state funds to be used for restroom improvements, changing room, locker room improvements to address probably some of the concerns that the legislators have bringing these bills forward.
The only other item is January 29 is the day of advocacy. If you let board leadership and Lori Ross know if you plan to travel to Helena that day, and we can coordinate transportation for that day.
Gary.
Thanks. Mike, on House Bill 156, is that the bill that has language in it that removes or limits the ability for an entity to protest?
I don't think so. I think that's a separate one. As far as the protested taxes and what they're using those things for, I think that's a separate one. I'd have to go back and, that one I was looking at it today. It's a 45-page bill, so I might be wrong on that. But that concept is there. My recollection is it's a separate bill.
Okay. I guess just to add, I found out today that this is obviously kind of one of my passions, this legislative session. But it's House Bill 153, House Bill 153. It's up for hearing next Monday in House Education. I plan on attending, so if anybody's interested in joining me. But this is the bill Representative Beatty has put forth, which expands the participation of stakeholders in the funding formula discussion. It also has language in there that allows them to contract with an expert agency or organization to help facilitate the meetings. Nothing specific in there, but I have my own thoughts on who that would be. But this is one where I'm trying to capture people to at least tune into that hearing, send messages to the committee in support of that bill. My gut tells me it probably has a reasonable chance of moving through. It's being presented pretty early, but I think they're trying to get that whole group lined up by April or May, I think. So kind of in addition to that, I've talked with every trustee here, as you know, over the last few days about trying to keep us in the loop on some of these bills, education bills. So I would appreciate meeting with Casey or Mike or whoever, and Leona was in on this meeting last week with Casey as well, to kind of put something together so we can communicate to trustees, at least so you know what bills are coming up, and we can each decide what we're going to do about it. But at least keep us educated on what's happening with these bills, and if you have any questions on how to tune into hearings, let me know. And but they're pretty interesting. So, thanks.
Any further comments? Sandy?
What was the name of that? That it was wasn't a webinar, but at the MSU, the head of, what was that the other night that was on, that taught, a lot of people attended it on Zoom, and it was just navigating all the parts of the legislative process. And it's recorded too, right, Gary?
Yeah, that's recorded on the EHHD website. And I forget the exact name of it, but it's Understanding the Legislative Process or something. I don't know. How many people tuned into that? Yeah, good. I know Laszlo was in on it and one other student, but yeah, that's recorded on the website. Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, and I've been trying to figure out the website. They have a new website, and some of it is not up and going very well. But the thing that's been added this year is Zoom, so you can Zoom in to comment, correct? Is that what you heard, Gary? That you can Zoom in and comment? So that's
one other thing is that I learned from that is that SAM, on their website, they put together which legislators are relative to your school district. And our school district has 14 legislators that are within our district. So they have that for every district, knows good information so we know who to contact. And those legislators, we heard this in the meeting, that when they hear from their constituents within their district, they will pay more attention to that. So that's why it's important to gather people from these different districts and have them engage in the legislative process.
Casey.
One more brief update. Mr. Waterman and I attended the League of Women Voters today, and that group statewide is taking on, they're engaging heavily in the vouchers and privatization topic. And so they prepared a slideshow today that they walked their group through. There were 20, 30 folks there, and that's happening statewide, and then they're going to take a position stance likely against privatization and vouchers. So that, again, another one of those important topics, but that group in particular, that seems to be their priority for the session.
Anything else on this item? Thank you, everyone. There will be no public comment on non-agenda items since there is no public. Is there any executive cabinet reports?
Yeah, briefly, you have in front of you the 23-24 or 24-25, excuse me, annual report. That also went out to parents on Friday in a digital format. It'll get put on the front page of our website. We'll use it this spring when we engage in election presentations. We try to mix up the content a little bit each year and focus on some priorities of the district. I think the finance page is an important one after you heard what you heard tonight about 35 plus years and 10 years of winning awards for finances. We make sure we highlight that in there, as well as we highlighted early literacy and the changes to the LRSP. If you have any questions on that, let me know. There's also, it came up again today at the league, grandparent saying that she had just moved to the community and wanted to know how our schools stack up against the state of Montana and other AA districts. And so we put that on the back page. Mr. Van Buren.
So I have a couple of updates or things to discuss. First, as you guys probably noticed, you had to log on to the network differently today using the guest password. We are phasing in 8021X, which is a protocol for logging on to a secure network via credentials, not via password. So as an employee, I log in with Mike Van Buren at bsd7.org. It gives me certain credentials to log on to the network and gives me certain access to the network. So our adults have certain access, our students have certain access. We no longer have a BSD7 staff, a BSD7 student network. It's all the same network. The protocol allows them access. This is just a much more secure way to maintain a wireless network. For example, when we've changed the password to the network, our staff network in the past, probably by day 2, we saw a huge amount of traffic, and that's because students get access to that password somehow, and we know that they're on the network accessing things that they shouldn't be able to access because it's the adult network. So we have that. Our plan for that, it's rolled out in the Wilson building, so we can do it building by building. And so what we've done is the Wilson building, and I think we're up to 5 elementaries. Last week we did 2 elementaries. This week we did 3 elementaries on Mondays. And we have tech staff at each building to make sure that rollout goes well. Because what happens is that, for example, today at one of our schools, iPads that never have been on the network this year yet, at this time of year. So things need to be updated on those iPads, and so to be able to access the new network. A lot of the other issues that we're dealing with are just staff personal phones, because it's a process to get your personal phone on there as well. Our focus on all of our support is making sure that we get the district assigned devices access to our network before we move on to the personal devices. So that's happening. And then the other piece is just a quick update around the PowerSchool data breach that you guys were made aware of, and we were made aware of last week. Just a bit of a timeline. On December 28th, PowerSchool became aware of a data breach they have a component of their system called PowerSource, And Power School, their SIS, our Student Information System, right? And so the nefarious actors got access to Power Source and was able to access the SIS. And the SIS is where all the student information and teacher information is held. And so they were able to access the student data table. And so certain fields of student data, and then also certain fields of teacher data as well. And so we know exactly what that data is. They are able to show or share those tables and data fields. And one of the guys in the data department was able to reverse engineer that and pull all the data that actually was accessed. So we know exactly what was accessed for our students and for our parents. That was on 28th. We were notified on January 7th, which was Wednesday of last week. We sent a communication out district-wide on January 8th, we were notified on the 7th. We worked through some process on the 8th and then communicated out on January 9th. And so moving forward, we have reached out to our insurance company. We went through our data breach protocol that we have here as well to keep track of it. We've reached out to insurance, and so there are multiple school districts in the state of Montana affected, and this is national and international, right? This is a huge deal. And so our insurance, Arch Insurance, has suggested that they be the point and they kind of work it for all of the districts, because essentially the data breach affects the schools all the same. There's the same student table data fields and same teacher data fields pulled from every school district. So and as of right now, also, the way this was a ransomware attack, the way it generally is, business of operation for ransomware, is they take this data, they say, pay us this amount of money, and we'll destroy the data. And so, as we know right now, that Power School has video evidence that all that data was destroyed and that it will not be used on the web or on the dark web. But that said, they have Strikeforce, which is a nationally known data monitoring. They're monitoring the system, and believe it or not, this is where the honor among thieves is actually a thing. As a ransomware organization, because it is a business for these people, is that if they don't destroy that data and they use that data, they lose credibility, and therefore the next organization that they attack won't pay them because they're going to spread the data anyway. So generally, that's the way the business operates. I mean, literally, it is a business operation for these people, right? And so our next steps is that the way the communication is going to happen is that Power School will develop the communications that needs to go out to parents, that needs to go out to students, FERPA communications they'll send those to the school district. We'll work with Arch and legal to review that, to make sure it meets Montana regulations, make sure it meets the needs of our community, send it back to Power School, and they will do the communication out. That's part of their role in this, and they'll be doing that. So we'll continue to communicate with our community as we get important and pertinent information from Power School and we move forward. So once again, as we move through this was not a data breach on any of our systems. It was Power School's data breach, and so and I was in contact with one legal firm just as part of the reaching out via our data breach hotline, and they feel like Power School is being tremendously transparent, doing all the steps that they need to be doing and moving forward. So I'll take any questions on those two items if you have them.
Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I'm curious, when you say that all that data has been destroyed, was that destroyed by the hacker, or
Yep.
it was?
Yep. And so that there's a line of script of code that they generally will video them typing in. That's called a shredder code, and it just shreds that data and just completely destroys it, so it cannot be reaccessed at any point.
And then can I ask,
Sandy. Mike.
so was there something? And then what does Power School do to make sure that these guys don't get in there? I mean, I guess maybe you don't know, but they have a plan?
Yeah, I mean, they've been able to identify like how was it accessed, and so they've closed a lot of those open, so if you think of Power Source is an access for them to hire organizations to do maintenance on their whole system, and that's what happened when these maintenance groups were compromised, and that's how they got into the system, and so they just need to work backwards from there and engineer better safeguards.
Okay.
Yep.
My takeaway is honor among thieves. I've never heard that Okay.
Chair Neal, briefly, the innovative tax credits open, the portal opens on Wednesday. At this point, we've got 12 donations that we've accepted, $167,000 total. Hopefully, those will all be accepted before the allocation runs out.
Thank you. Remind me, it's until the allocation runs out, or is there's also a time cutoff as well? No?
Just till the allocation runs out.
And what is that number again?
$6 million.
Wow. Statewide?
Statewide.
Yeah. And does the website show what the statewide tracker is?
Yeah, but it doesn't, there's nothing in there right now until it opens at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning, and then all of us statewide are hammering in, competing with our typing skills to
Okay.
get them entered fast enough.
Thank you. Any further executive cabinet reports? Okay. Board of Trustee reports. Leanna.
Last week I went to the MTSBA Board of Directors meeting. So just to add on, it was all about mostly about the legislative session, and just to add on to some things that were already said here. One thing that we talked about at length that I don't think I was aware of in this way is litigation happening with House Bill 393, which was the special needs savings account. But apparently what's happening with that and what's happening in the legislature now is to blur that line of special needs qualifying and have it be, any student. So it's kind of concerning thinking about that. It's a backdoor way to look at vouchers. So that was just an interesting conversation. I can tell you more about that, but I didn't realize that was happening. So that was the surprise. And then a lot of what we talked about is the STARS Act, and I mean that all looks on track pretty good to happening. The part in there that our district had a part in was the cost of living increases, which it's really just going back to our taxpayers to create ways to think about how we're adjusting for cost of living here. And then there's quite a bit in there if you've read it, the ways that we can use that money. So that was like very expansive. So that was just another piece there. And then third, if you're going to the state website to track bills, apparently that's kind of messy this year. And if you're interested, like I know if we're going to, whether we're looking at our MTSBA emails or SAM or wherever, there is another site called Fast Democracy. I think you can just Google that and sign in for it. And it's a much more manageable system for tracking bills, whether it's at the federal level or at our state level. So it's just called Fast Democracy if you want to sign up for that. And then you can get the text of the bills and committees and all that kind of stuff. And then just a reminder too, for January 29th as a way to go up for the Day of Advocacy if you're available. So I think I'm committed to going, Gary, so it'd be great to see us up there. And the legislators, when I've gone before, they do all show up because they get a free lunch. So you will have a chance to talk to people.
Thank you. And I would say for the January 29th, please, hopefully I'm not stepping out of, can we have him email you, Lori, and you can coordinate that? Okay. So if whoever is going on January 29th, please email Lori. Thanks, Lori. You look kind of tired. Any further Board of Trustees reports before I gavel us out of here?